What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? Thinker St. James here with you for a special presentation tonight. This is an examination of the lawsuit that was brought late last week against the UFC Freedom 250 event. It was an interesting case, and I was going to do a video about it, but as I got deeper into the research, I kind of was going over some of the elements of it, and there's a lot that is in play in this thing. So I thought it'd be better to do it as a stream where I can kind of talk through certain elements, read through the actual complaint, and see if we can come to some conclusion from it. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this is that I guess what I'll say is that I won't bury the lead here. I do look at this suit as a bit of a stunt. But you also know, if you've been watching the live streams, that I am a big fan of Reckless Ben, and I've been following the bricks and minifig situation a lot, very closely over these last couple of weeks. And I am not opposed to a stunt suit, because the purpose of a stunt lawsuit, or any kind of stunt in this capacity, is to bring attention to the issues that are at play. And I think that this lawsuit accomplishes that to an extent, but is not going to necessarily, in a broader sense, get very far or really make much of a difference. I don't think that this is going to end up being the thing that's going to stop UFC Freedom 250. But there are interesting elements to it, and we will get into those throughout the course of this thing. So I have the complaint here. We can read through this article just a little bit to give you an overview of it. So this lawsuit was filed on Saturday, previous Saturday, and it is seeking to block the upcoming UFC fight planned for the White House South Lawn as part of celebrations surrounding President Donald Trump's 80th birthday and America's 250th anniversary. The Public Integrity Project is who filed this lawsuit, and it is filed on behalf of two private citizens. One is a Vietnam War veteran, and the other is a civic activist, who argue the event violates federal law and that the administration's authorization was unlawful. And the details of that are maybe where there might be some elements that could be valid to an extent, but we will go through those details in the actual complaint. Didgery Dave is here. What up, Didgery Dave? How are you, sir? Hope you are well. Coming in for a little bit of U.S. politics. I guess I should also say, as a preface to all of this, there will be discussions of politics in this inherently. So try not to get overly inflammatory towards any one side of the aisle. But by nature of the complaint, there are political allegations here. And once we get into some of the players in this thing, you'll understand that political motivation might be, partially behind this. And I would actually, more than partially, I would say. So of course we know that the UFC event is what this is about, scheduled for the 14th. Obviously that is this Sunday. And I'm not going to go into any of these quotes and stuff because we're going to read them in the complaint. But that, I guess, really, honestly, is about the extent of the backstory that you need to know. So the other thing that I wanted to bring up here as we get into the complaint, here's the legal document. And it is rather lengthy. There are 35 pages total, but double-spaced. This will go quick, I promise. So Susan Douglas, Paul Romano are the plaintiffs. Those are the two private citizens involved here. And the lawsuit is against the National Park Service, the U.S. Department of the Interior. Those are the primary defendants in this case. Now, the Department of the Interior is the organization that oversees all of the grounds of public land, basically, and then by extension, they are over the National Park Service from what I have gathered. As yet another thing I should mention here before we get too deep is that I am not a lawyer. I have no legal background here. This is all layman's understanding of all of this stuff. If I get any of the details wrong, let me know about it in the comments, perhaps. But I do not claim to be an expert on any of this. This is all just my interpretation as a half-wit. But so the Department of the Interior is the governmental body that oversees and upkeeps public lands and maintains those types of areas. And then by extension, the National Park Service does the same thing, but for the national parks. And key to note here is that this is something I didn't know going into this, but the White House is actually a public park. I think that is here. Yeah, there you go. The White House is a national park. It says it big and bold when I was doing the research. The White House is, in fact, a national park. So that is why they are the ones that are being named in this lawsuit. And just so that you know who the other side of the coin is here, this is the website for the Public Integrity Project. It says, stop corruption before it's too late. And then you see the cast of characters that are at the table here. So I would say when you have this group of people on your website and you're talking about corruption, it's pretty obvious that it's being aimed at those people. And I hope, my hope at least, is that if this organization is indeed about stopping corruption and is not strictly partisan, that they keep that same energy across the board. Because I believe if you go to other parts of the website, maybe not there, but I know that there's one other place that I'd seen something on here. Let me see. I think it might have been one of these. Yeah, so there you go. Go to other places on the website, you see who you see. Obviously, same realm that we're talking about here. So you've got the president on the front, you've got Elon in a MAGA hat on another page. It becomes very clear very quickly as to what the potential political leanings of this organization are and why they have decided to take this action. So again, I say if their goal is actually to stop corruption, Public Integrity Project is the name. I think that that's a worthy cause, and I think that throughout the course of the complaint, you'll see that I do agree with a lot of the things that they say in this lawsuit, but to publicize it this way, I hope accomplishes at least that aim of publicity, because A, I don't think the suit is going to hold up, and B, you're being very open about the fact that that there seems to be political bias at play. And I would think that for something as important as the stopping of government corruption, that you should be as nonpartisan as possible, considering that there is corruption all across the board. So those are the players in this thing, and we can get into the actual complaint. So the complaint for declaratory and injunctive relief. So this is an injunction against the UFC Freedom 250 event. And it says, on June 14th, 2026, for the first time in this nation's history, a live sporting event will be held on the grounds of the White House. Or at least it will if President Donald J. Trump has his way. So, this is, starting off with true statement, obviously, this is the first time that there will be a sporting event of any kind at the White House. We will continue from that. I mean, acknowledging the history of it, I think, is kind of a dual element of this, because on the one hand, people are looking at it like this is not a great thing, that it's making history. And then other people on the other side are like, it's history. It's history in the making. This is a historic event. You've seen the claw, the actual construct of everything. It's quite a grandiose scale that they are bringing this thing to. But obviously, if you are against the administration, then by extension, you'd be against that. I always wonder at any time with something like this, if it was the other side of the political aisle doing the same thing, if they would have the same energy towards it. We continue. Trump's administration has authorized the Ultimate Fighting Championship, UFC, a mixed martial arts promotion, to put on a night of cage fights on the South Lawn. The plan is for fighters to conduct the ceremonial weigh-ins and face-offs at the Lincoln Memorial, make pre-fight walkouts from the Oval Office, and do combat in a massive structure now under construction just steps from the executive residence. Of course, that is not correct. From what I understand, I believe the face-offs are at the Lincoln Memorial, and I think one of the press conferences was the weigh-ins. I don't know where the weigh-ins were, but or will be rather, but I don't think that they are at the Lincoln Memorial. So already not off to a great start with the factual nature of things, and that's going to be a reoccurring theme throughout a lot of this. Trump planning to keep the claw for good. Yes, I believe that that's actually referenced in here as well. So we'll talk about that when that comes up. But yeah, that you're not wrong. The fact that the president is potentially thinking about making this a permanent structure is certainly interesting. I don't know if he actually said he wanted to keep the entire claw as the permanent structure or just the octagon, but when you see the entire layout of everything, it would be a little bit strange to just have an octagon by itself. And then if you think about the claw staying as well, it would fundamentally change the entire the landscape of that area, which is, again, a big part of this lawsuit. So we will certainly address that. The plan is deeply corrupt, the complaint continues. So this is an interesting element of it. Talking about the corruption, this is a public integrity project lawsuit. Their aim is to stop corruption. They come out and say the plan is deeply corrupt. The lawsuit is not expressly about the corruption. And that is why I say this lawsuit is a stunt. This lawsuit, I believe, is very much a mechanism for making those kinds of big verbose statements, but doing so within the context of these potential grievances. So when the lawsuit in paragraph number 2 says flat out the plan is deeply corrupt, that's not the legally actionable element of this lawsuit. That is just something that they are throwing in there so that we feel that this is corrupt. They have their reasons for it. And again, I'll go through and say where I agree and disagree, but in a legal action sense, that's an interesting way to do that, is to just be like, I'm going to file a lawsuit. It's going to be about one thing, but I'm going to log roll all this other stuff into it, just attach it and make all of my grievances known in the, under the auspice of a lawsuit. That has maybe a couple of points in it. It's hilarious either way that he wants to keep it. I know. Absolutely. I agree, Drew Dave. Let's keep going here. So the plan is deeply corrupt. The event billed as UFC Freedom 250 is, as the name suggests, being organized by the UFC, whose chief executive, Dana White, is a close friend and ally of the president. The president is giving White and his company what none have enjoyed before: unfettered access to the White House and Lincoln Memorial to stage a private, for-profit sports event with all the promotion and branding opportunities that accompany such access. That, I think, is another thing that is questionable about this for-profit sporting event. They're going to go into detail as to how they define that, but in a general sense, where do you see the profit? You know what I mean? Like, I think that on the supporter side of the event, they would say, well, no, this is not for profit. The organization, the UFC, is paying for all of it. They're only standing to enrich themselves potentially through exposure and by extension maybe advertising, but I don't think that there's necessarily going to be any sponsorship on the event itself, from what I've seen at least, but that might not be 100% true. And that's really kind of where this lawsuit will end up going to, is that while there might not be an express payout for the event, there is a profit motive in the exposure, in the residuals of everything. And with the president being as intertwined with the organization as he has become with his friendship with Dana White, he might stand to gain himself on the back end. The UFC is not being coy about the event's pecuniary nature, meaning meaning that potential profit motive, pecuniary nature there. One executive recently called it the greatest earned marketing tool of all time. There we go. And he is far from the only one salivating at the business upside. Recent reporting has revealed that the UFC itself is selling VIP packages for between $1 million and $1.5 million per head. Recent reporting likewise has revealed that sponsors like Singaporean cryptocurrency exchange Crypto.com are clamoring over each other to see their brands plastered adjacent to the executive residence and reflecting pool. So that, I don't know if that's actually true or not. If Crypto.com is going to be plastered anywhere near this event. From everything that I have seen, I've not seen any actual explicit promotion for companies, for private enterprise, but we'll have to wait and see at the event, I suppose, if it does happen. And the UFC's broadcast partner, Paramount Skydance, which is run by two other Trump allies, Larry and David Ellison, has decided that no American will be able to take in this celebration of America, quote unquote, without first paying $8.99 plus tax for a Paramount Plus streaming subscription. Also, not true. We saw that being widely reported for a little while that, you needed a Paramount Plus subscription to watch this event. It is going to be aired on CBS. So, also, just not true. However, I do think that there is potentially some element that you would say, well, I mean, okay, you can just watch it on CBS, but like as we have evolved as a media consuming society, not everybody does have access to basic television, non-cable television, over-the-air television. So if you don't have CBS access and all you have is streaming, then you're not going to be able to partake in this event without a subscription. There might be some roundabout legal way to make an argument for that being, having some type of legal action attached to it, but a little bit of a stretch at this at this phase of where we are with this lawsuit. But again, all of this is just the dressing of this, because none of these are the claims, which I'm going to keep going back to that. These are all just statements. These are all statements of perceived corruption. These are not the actual claims themselves. So, you can say, this is corrupt. People are going to have to pay $8.99 for this. UFC is going to potentially make money off of this. None of those are what actually are listed as the legally actionable claims here. Chase is here. I'm here. What have I missed? Just the preamble to everything, going over who the actual people involved in this lawsuit are. And we're still early on, though, so hopefully you'll be able to gain some of the context. And, of course, this will be a VOD. And I might put this out as an edited video, maybe, if anything actually comes from this lawsuit. But I don't know if I'm going to have time because the event is Sunday. And, this probably is not going to go very far, I would say. All right. Trump, too, has plans to benefit financially. Reporting published in late May revealed that earlier this spring he purchased up to $50,000 worth of stock in TKO, UFC's owner. Now, that, I think, again, if you want to talk to specifically the corruption aspect of things, I think that's valid. I think that is legitimately valid, and we have seen a lot of that type of self-enrichment from the president in his time in office. We talk about things like the insider trading that has gone on or tantamount to that, allegedly, of when Trump would make an announcement about some type of action politically, and mere moments before the action is revealed to the public, a whole lot of trading goes on speculative prediction markets. A lot of things that would be leading one to believe that there was inside knowledge as to what his announcement was going to be. Now, does that link directly back to him? Perhaps not. But we've also seen, even with this event itself, the Trump/UFC Freedom 250 commemorative coin. He's getting a kickback from that for sure. Trump branded apparel all over the place as far as, these types of things. So to say that the president is, a $50,000 shareholder, $50,000 worth of stock shareholder in TKO, and this event is for the general enrichment of TKO based on how they're framing it, perhaps actually some legitimate claim to be made there. However, again, still not the claims. Still not the legally actionable claims of this lawsuit. The ostensible occasion for the spectacle is the semi-quincentennial. Dana White said that the aim is to celebrate the 250th birthday of America, although June 14th, 2026 will also be Trump's 80th birthday. White has steadfastly maintained that the timing is just a coincidence. So fucking what, first of all? Second of all, you're talking about the timing of the event when you very strategically, it would seem, have brought this lawsuit the week before the event. Like, I think it's a funny thing for you to be talking about, you know, oh man, isn't it a coincidence that Trump's birthday is that day when it's supposed to be for America, but it's actually celebrated? Yeah, okay, well, you know, fair enough that may be true, but why did you wait to bring a lawsuit against this event when there was a year's worth of lead up for it? You waited till the week before to file for an injunction. Very strange. Annie, another good one. Hello, Annie. How are you? White has good reason to stick to his story. Federal law tightly restricts private use of the national capital's most sacred monumental spaces, which are national parklands. Under the National Park Service's, NPS or Park Service, under the National Park Service's usual permitting regime, no special events of any sort, including any sporting events, may be held on the South Lawn or at the Lincoln Memorial, nor may structures be erected on the South Lawn without express authorization from Congress and a thorough environmental review. Now we're getting into the actually legally actionable claims here. They're saying that for an event of this type, there has to be special authorization from Congress for the erecting of structures such as the claw and a thorough environmental review by, I believe, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. So if that is the case, and those were not actually followed correctly, therein lies potentially something that could have merit legally. Because I think that the environmental element of it is actually the strongest point of this lawsuit, because as a national park, which we have found, again, I'll put this on screen one more time here. The White House is a national park. As a national park, there is a standard, because this is public land. You have to understand with national parks belong to the American people. They are not the property of the government. They are the property of all of us as Americans. As such, there is a standard that must be met to ensure that that land is being properly maintained, handled, and not harmed by an event of this nature or any event that takes place on that land. So if if an environmental review is required in that regard, and it was not done, that actually might be something that has a legitimate merit to it. To authorize UFC Freedom 250 in the face of these constraints, Trump's administration appears to be relying on an NPS temporary rule enacted for the semi-quincentennial. Under the temporary rule, the Park Service may disregard its usual permitting regime and authorize special events planned, organized, and executed by executive departments and agencies or the Semi-Quincentennial Commission for the celebration of the 250th anniversary of American independence to occur on DC's monumental grounds. So they're saying that the way that they are getting around this is because there is an exemption for Freedom 250 events, because this is not the only one of these events. There have been concert series and other festivals and things like that that are all under the America 250 banner. And UFC Freedom 250 is just one of those things that would fall within the purview of that special exemption. But they're going to further claim that UFC Freedom 250 actually was not one of those things, that it does not fall under that special exemption. That's one of the things that I really would like to know if it is true or not. And perhaps if this lawsuit actually does end up getting litigated, maybe we'll find something out about that. But why would this event, potentially the most public of the America 250 events, why would this not fall under the special exemption is my question to that. And I don't have an answer for it that I suppose would be what this lawsuit should be trying to get to the bottom of. Plaintiffs bring this case because recent revelations, including in particular reporting published on June 4th, 2026, have made clear that UFC Freedom 250 does not satisfy the conditions for authorization under the temporary rule. The event is neither, quote, for the celebration of the 250th anniversary of American independence, unquote, nor crucially being, quote, planned, organized, and executed, unquote, by the federal government. So, I mean, I guess then there would be your answer as to why it doesn't fall under the auspice of the special exemptions there. But to say that this event is not being organized for the anniversary of American independence, I think is a very, very far stretch. I don't think that you're going to really be able to make that claim. Granted, is it on Trump's birthday? Sure it is. Had they done it on a different day, maybe it would not look as much like that was the driving force. And I do think that there is a lot of merit to the idea that this administration, not just this administration, but certainly this one, does a lot of things and then, kind of tries to backdoor the reasoning for them. We want to take down this monument. Oh, it's not because of this reason. It's actually because of this reason, that type of thing. And when everybody really kind of knows that it's actually for the first thing, the problematic thing, I don't have a specific example of it, but trust I have seen plenty. And, it kind of always just reminds me of when Pam Bondi was talking about the Dow Jones being over 5,000 when she was being questioned about the Epstein files. You know what I mean? It's that type of diversionary tactics that I think, again, this is not specific to this administration. This is a politics-wide thing, but just saying it does happen. Now, that being said, the not being planned, organized, and executed by the federal government, I would think that it is in conjunction with the federal government. And it has to be. By nature of the event, it has to be in conjunction with it. So if it is not being planned, organized, and executed to the letter of those words, maybe there's some legal merit to that. It is being planned, organized, and executed by the UFC. But to think that there was no governmental partnership with that would satisfy that requirement seems a little bit ridiculous to me. Tyler Betts is here. What's up, brother? Tyler Betts is beefing with somebody? Spread love. All right. Rather, UFC Freedom 250 is a private, for-profit sporting event being planned, organized, and executed by the UFC, its broadcast partners, and its advertisers, not by the federal government. Again, I've already said what I think about that part of it. This is a little bit of a stretch to make as a claim. And it is not in any material sense a celebration of the 250th anniversary of American independence. It is instead a celebration of the UFC's brand and the 80th anniversary of Donald Trump's birth. See, obviously, that would be what they would say. And some people would say that's probably legitimately what it actually is. But can you prove that in a court of law? I think that is shaky grounds. For these reasons, UFC Freedom 250 does not satisfy the strict conditions that must be satisfied for special semi-quincentennial events to occur on the White House lawn or at the Lincoln Memorial. So there you go. At work, almost off. Well, have a good rest of your shift, Tyler. Any erection of structures on national monument grounds must be expressly authorized by Congress and Jesus Christ, let me start that one over. Any erection of structures on national monumental grounds must be expressly authorized by Congress and, insofar as it constitutes a major federal action, must undergo thorough National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, review. No agency temporary rule may displace these requirements, neither of which have been satisfied. there you go. That right there, I would say, is probably your biggest possible grounds for actual action to be taken in the case here. I don't know if that's going to be something that will actually be pursued, but if there's anything that I think has a little bit of merit, that would be it. Plaintiffs are individuals who are being harmed by defendants' unlawful acts. This is another thing that I think is kind of funny about this. Plaintiff Susan Douglas is a senior citizen activist and organizer who is suffering aesthetic, physical, expressive, and procedural harms as a result of defendants' unlawful acts. Aesthetic harm. She's suffering aesthetic harm. Saying that, oh, you know, the aesthetic of the White House is being harmed, and by extension, that is harming me. Another somewhat spurious claim, I would say. But aesthetic, physical harm. Because again, you take these all, you know, harm is attached to all of these. So aesthetic harm. Physical harm. What is the physical harm? Curious about that. Expressive harm? How do you even classify expressive harm? I don't even know what that really is. And procedural harms, again, procedural harms define these things. So whatever. She's suffering aesthetic, physical, expressive, and procedural harms as a result of defendants' unlawful acts. Plaintiff Paul Romano is a Vietnam War veteran who is suffering aesthetic, dignitary, and procedural harms as a result of the defendant's unlawful acts. And I would think that the dignitary harms are probably in relation to him being a veteran, but we'll find out. Plaintiffs bring this case to seek judicial relief for their injuries, uphold the rule of law, and protect our nation's most cherished monuments from corrupt exploitation. Right. So, we don't have to necessarily go through all of the parties, but I do think that there's some stuff in here that is a little bit interesting. Like for instance here, you have the description of Susan Douglas, who is an organizer, a political organizer who is a Virginia resident, and she's often protesting and has other events that take place at the National Mall and the Lincoln Memorial. So she's basically saying that, you know, she lives in Virginia, but she goes to these places often. And, you know, she's protested and testified against alterations to DC's monumental landscape. So she has a vested interest in how Washington, DC looks from an aesthetic perspective. This one's a little bit more interesting to me. Paul Romano is a retired Air Force sergeant and veteran of the Vietnam War, a former police officer with the Department of Defense, and a resident of Arlington, Virginia. He frequently travels along the National Mall and past the White House and Lincoln Memorial as part of his part-time work as a rideshare driver, and he has protested and testified against alterations to the DC monumental landscape. So this is basically saying that this dude he's harmed by the UFC Freedom 250 event because he's an Uber driver that has to see it when he drives past. I mean, make of that what you will as far as like actual grounds for legal action, I suppose. This just goes into the National Park Service, of course, and what that is, and the United States Department of Interior, and why they are the people who are going to be the defendants in this case, potentially, and then the actual individuals at those departments that are representative of the departments in this action. So we can skip over that. This is the jurisdiction and venue. So, of course, this is Washington, D.C. that this is all taking place in. And these are also things that are not particularly important for our purposes here. But, you know, I will link the full document is linked in the description of this live stream if you want to read those things and anything that we skip over, basically. So here are the general allegations. The South Lawn, President's Park, Lincoln Memorial, and the National Mall are protected federal parklands at the symbolic heart of the nation's capital. President's Park comprises the White House and its grounds, including the South Lawn, Lafayette Park, and the Eclipse, together with the surrounding sidewalks. Despite the name, President's Park does not belong to the president and may not be exploited as his whims dictate. As I said at the start of this thing, this is federal land that is for the public, which is kind of ironic, though, if you think about it, because if it is public land, if it's a national park, why is it that I can't go there all the time? Why can't I go to any of the public parks all the time? If it is land for the people, I'm one of the people. Why can't I just walk up to the White House front door and just knock on the door? I don't know. Interesting element of that, I suppose. Just thought about that. But, I'm sure that there's some kind of caveat to that. But they're saying that the president doesn't own it. It is our land. This land is your land. This land is my land. Rather, the President's Park is a unit of the National Park System administered by the National Park Service. The National Mall and Lincoln Memorial are likewise administered by the National Park System as a part of its National Mall and Memorial Parks group. Like all national parklands, these cherished national spaces are held and managed in trust for the public. So yes, that is what the purpose of the Department of Interior and the National Park Service is, to maintain those places for all of our benefit. Under the National Parks Service Organic Act, the service must manage the lands in its care so as to conserve the scenery, natural and historic objects and wildlife in the system units, and to provide for the enjoyment of the same in such manner and by such means as will leave them unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. Now, see, that right there does actually have a little bit of merit to it, because really, if this does not fall under, this is why this gets into a little bit of like gray territory, because it's presuming that this event does not fall under the exemptions for Freedom 250 or for America 250. So that is a big supposition when it comes to this, because if it does not fall under that special category, then this is a violation of that by its nature, because it's altering a national space or a public space in a way that does fundamentally change it and could impact the enjoyment of future generations. All right. Federal law and NPS regulations strictly limit private use of the Capitol's national monument spaces. To preserve the sanctity and character of Washington's national monumental spaces, including President's Park and the Lincoln Memorial, federal laws and regulations strictly limit their uses. First, under this statute, the Park Service's overarching regulation for the National Capital Region, the Capital Region Regulation, strict permitting restrictions apply to special events, a defined term that include all sporting events. So yes, this is certainly something that is covered under these restrictions, if it is not covered with the exemption. See why this gets into murky territory. With respect to the White House lawn area, no permit may be issued authorizing special events unless the event is 1. Held at the Ellipse, or 2. Is the annual commemorative wreath-laying ceremony in Lafayette Park, which neither of these are. The Capital Region Regulation defines the White House area as the area bounded by Constitution Ave, blah, blah, blah. This is all just the boundaries of this space that are being disputed. With respect to the Lincoln Memorial, these are the areas around the Lincoln Memorial that are in claim here. Under any circumstances, or with respect to the Lincoln Memorial, special events are not allowed under any circumstances, with the single exemption of the official annual commemorative Lincoln birthday ceremony. So as you're seeing here, there are these elements that there are these events that are for these specific areas, but they're very tightly regulated, because obviously there's like single events for all of these things that are the only things that are allowed. So if that's the full extent of what is allowed, then there's not much. There's really not much. So there's not really a lot of wiggle room if this does not fall under the special exemption for America 250 events. Permits for special events are issued by the regional director. The regional director is required to base the determination to issue a permit on, among other criteria, quote, whether the activities contemplated for the proposed special event are in conformity with all applicable laws and regulations. So the regional director says, does this fall under applicable law? Under the Capital Region regulation, certain temporary structures may be erected in connection with permitted special events, but such structures must satisfy strict purpose, preservation, and durational requirements. So it's saying, obviously, these events do not do that. Under a provision of the Park Services Organic Act, no building or structure may be erected on any reservation, park, or public grounds in the federal government in the District of Columbia, except insofar as authorized by Congress. So again, really a lot of this hinges on whether or not this event has the exemption. I keep going back to the same point. It certainly is applicable to all of these things. What if the event gets canceled on Saturday? I mean, that's what that's why we're doing this right now, Meat Rocket. Shout out to Meat Rocket. But yeah, it really, again, what we're getting at through all of this as we read through is just the idea that there may be some potentially debatable elements to this case, whether or not they will actually get it in front of a judge who's going to make a ruling on it in time. Why did you wait until a week before the thing if you really thought that there was any merit to it? Again, this goes back to the nature of this legal action being somewhat stunt-like, I would say. Under the National Environmental Policy Act, before undertaking any major federal action significantly affecting the quality of the human environment, the responsible official must prepare either the environmental assessment or a more comprehensive environmental impact statement. As I said, that's your biggest claim right there. If there was no environmental impact statement, I think that actually has some weight to it. But really, I think that actually even going like one step more logically with it, this entire case hinges on whether or not this event is expressly authorized under the America 250 exemption. Because the rebuttal to all of this is, well, if it's under the exemption, it doesn't need the environmental survey. If it's under the exemption, it doesn't have to satisfy the requirements of all of those other elements that the National Park Service has to use in order to approve or deny other events. The stipulations of that exemption are very important to this. In fact, I wish that I had something that could let me know what the stipulations of that are specifically. And I'm sure that there is something about that, but I have not been able to find it. Hey, John Dong, how are you, sir? The event is on Sunday, though? Yes, NDT, the event is on Sunday. Absolutely it is. But if it got canceled on Saturday for an event on Sunday, that would certainly be a wrench in everything. And if it got canceled on Sunday right before the event, that would be even crazier. The fact that this lawsuit was even able to be filed on a Saturday was interesting to me. This lawsuit came about last Saturday. So kind of interesting. All right, continuing on. A major federal action is any action that the responsible agency determines is subject to substantial federal control and responsibility when the level of federal involvement in a non-federal project amounts to the creation of a joint venture or partnership between the federal agency and a non-federal agency. Federal courts have considered the arrangement to be a major federal action. Interesting there. Because does that not contradict some of their earlier claims? Because if they're saying that the UFC is the one that is organizing and putting on the event, but in the same document saying that this is a major federal action because it is a public-private joint venture, would that not imply that there is significant federal involvement? You tell me. But again, this lawsuit does have a few things that are somewhat sloppy, and that might be one of them. Because again, if you go back, I'd have to find it, of course, but where it said that this is being administered by the UFC. course, I'm going to have problems finding it in this sea of words, of course, but we did see it say, actually, I think it was before all of the plaintiff stuff. Yeah, here. Plaintiffs bring this case because recent revelations, blah, 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 have made clear UFC Freedom 250 does not satisfy the conditions for authorization under the temporary rule. The event is neither for the celebration of the 250th anniversary of American independence, nor crucially, being planned, organized, and executed by the federal government. How is that not directly contradictory to this statement here, where it says that this would be a major federal action? I think that doesn't really track. All right, anyway, moving on. Hit my vape real quick and we will move on. A Park Service temporary rule exempts certain government-run America 250 events from usual regulatory requirements, but only those events and without displacing limits on erection of structures or waiving environmental review. That is crucial right there. A Park Service temporary rule exempts certain government-run America 250 events from usual regulatory requirements. That's the exemption I've been talking about. But only those events and without displacing limits on erection of certain structures or waiving environmental review. If that is the case, then there is grounds for this. But that really is the crux of everything right there. Is this event under the umbrella of this exemption, and does the exemption grant those things that this lawsuit is saying it does not? That is for the court to decide. On June 17, 2025, NPS published a temporary rule titled National Capital Region America 250 Events. The America 250 rule rests on Executive Order 14189, titled Celebrating America's 250th Birthday. The America 250 rule purports the exemption of certain semi-quincentennial events from limits in the Capital Region Regulation. To create that exemption, the America 250 rule added a new subsection, this one here, to the Capital Region Regulation, that is the America 250 exemption. As relevant here, the America 250 exemption provides the restrictions, limitations, closures, prohibitions, priority use designations, and other requirements for special events do not apply to the America 250 events, which are those events specially planned, organized, and executed by executive departments and agencies or the Semi-Quincentennial Commission for the celebration of the 250th anniversary of American independence. So, yeah, they're saying that this is the exemption. We're going into it now. And these events are supersede the normal rules for these places. The America 250 exemption provides a table of requirements affected. Among other items, that table includes the prohibition on issuing permits for special events in the White House area, the prohibition on issuing permits for special events within portions of the Washington Monument, Lincoln Memorial, Jefferson Memorial, and Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and restrictions on the placement of stages and sound amplification equipment at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. So it's saying that there are, I guess just that they're listed in there. By its plain terms, yes, okay, yeah, they're taking a long route to actually get to the crux of this thing, but they're saying that it has a table of contents that says their exemptions are in place here, and these are the exemptions, and these are the areas where they are exempt. By its plain terms, the America 250 exemption applies only to America 250 events that are planned, organized, and executed by executive departments and agencies or the Semi-Quincentennial Commission. How are you saying that this is not that it's not executed by executive departments if it is specifically being in conjunction with the federal government? I mean, like Dana White had said that, what was it? I think Ivanka Trump. Now, granted, she's not a government official. Is she not? I mean, I don't think that. What is her actual capacity at this point? But I don't think that she's on it anymore anyway. Point is, I think that it's a bit of a stretch to think that they're not, the UFC is not doing this in conjunction with an executive department of some sort. You know, I think that by nature of it happening at the White House, there has to be some involvement with an executive department. So to say, was it planned by an executive department? Perhaps not. Was it organized? Perhaps not. But was it executed by an executive department? By its very nature, I believe that it has to be so. And again, perhaps up for debate. That's why there is a lawsuit here. But I think that would be reasonable to believe, is that there is some involvement with an executive department, or else it would not be happening at the White House, period. But again, up to interpretation. By its plain terms, the America 250 exemption applies only to events for the celebration of the 250th anniversary of American independence. Again, just saying that it happens to be on Trump's birthday as well, and that really being the reason that it's happening, doesn't make it so. I think that you are reaching for them grapes pretty hard, Because yes, I would say, is it actually for Trump's birthday? Yeah, probably. But is it also being trapped in is it also being surrounded by the trappings of America's independence and the celebration thereof? Yes. So you can say that it's a sly little backdoor way of doing it, but it tracks. It works either way. So this is a little bit interesting in that regard as to whether or not there's actually any merit to it. But that specifically, I don't think stands. Again, I think you might have some element of that first, the first portion here about the planned, organized, and executed, maybe. But to say that this is not a celebration of the 250th anniversary of American independence, I think is just flat out going to be something that'll be laughed out of court. In other words, the exemption does not reach the exemption does not reach events planned, organized, or executed by private parties. Again, it is a private-public partnership, or it would not be happening on the lawn of the White House. Nor does it reach events held for private commercial purposes, or for that matter, for any purposes other than the celebration of the semi-quincentennial. So this, again, is a little bit of where, I would say, do I agree with some of these claims? Is there a financial incentive on the other side of the event for all of the parties involved? Potentially, yes. Does that mean that the actual core of it is what they're claiming it to be here? I don't think that it's satisfying that strict viewpoint in order to actually achieve an injunction. The America 250 rule does not purport to displace the congressional authorization requirement for erected structures under such and such statute, nor could it, as a temporary rule, may not contradict a duly enacted federal statute. Fair. But I don't... Then why have an exemption if it's not going to supersede it? That's another thing that I don't know if that actually tracks. Yeah, let me just read that one more time. The America 250 rule does not purport to displace the... it's saying it does not purport to do that. So, yeah, it's not purporting to displace it entirely, but it is something that stands on a temporary basis. The casuals, lawsuiters don't get how much the UFC has made the event about America, not Trump's birthday, and or about even the UFC. Yes, it's another good point. We did, that's a very good point, actually, Chase. We did just hear Dana White say that much like the Sphere, much like the Noche UFC card, the whole event is going to be telling the story of the United States. So the trappings of this thing, to try to say that this is, just an elaborate birthday gift to Trump, again, whether it is or not, I think that there is some merit to it being that, but it is going to be cloaked in the America dressing. It's got red, white, and blue all over it, and it is in relation to America 250. So how can you, you can't extract those things, whether or not, you can say, oh, they're trying to make it seem like it was a happy accident. It was not an accident that it's his birthday. We get that. But is it also, two things can be true at once is the point there, What up? Yay, CTE. How you doing, brother? We really reading legal documents right now. Gonna have to call back my senior year law class. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, we're getting deep, brother. We've got plenty more pages to go too. We're about a third of the way through this thing at this point. But we're gonna start getting into the actual UFC stuff here now, which is the stuff that I think is most interesting to for our purposes here at Yama. You must be a lawsuiter. I certainly am not. I certainly am not a lawsuiter. Although I have been involved in several. I wanted to be a criminal defense lawyer. You probably would have been pretty good at that. Epstein card really is about America. Wow. That gets into a whole different issue there, NDT. That gets into a whole different issue. But you can talk to Sean Strickland about that. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you. Hollow Heretic. With that being said, Diego Lopez flying triangle around one. Yeah, true. I mean, again, and we're going to get through all of this. Like I said, I'm committed. We're going to go through all of this stuff. We're going to read through all of it. But at the end of the day, yes, Diego Lopez fighting is probably what you should be looking forward to, because I don't think any of this is going to amount to much of a hill of beans. But let's see here. Okay, so we read about that. It does not purport to displace the congressional authorization. The America 250 rule also does not waive the requirements of the National Environmental Policy Act. No one's saying that the America 250 rule exempts any of these things necessarily. Like it is a temporary alteration. So, I mean, again, I thought that the National Environmental Policy Act portion of this might have been the strongest leg to stand on, but if it is under the exemption, then all of those things might have been exempt. Now, there is certainly some merit to the argument that you should not be exempting these things. I don't think that there should be an exemption of the National Environmental Policy Act when you're doing something like this. You potentially permanently altering a national park. Whether or not it becomes permanent, that remains to be seen. The president has said he might want it to be. But either way, I mean, you are at least in a general sense, you don't know the repercussions of something like this on a national park unless you do the environmental study that needs to be done. Unless you do the environmental survey, you won't know what the lasting impacts of an event like this are. All of the emissions that get put out into the atmosphere, all of, the heavy equipment that is going to be on the grounds, leaking things into the lawn and stuff like that. I mean, these are just basic examples, and I'm sure that there are a lot more in-depth ones that people who actually are more knowledgeable about nature would know than myself. But, if those are the things that are just off the top of my head, if you don't do the actual survey of the land, you won't know what the impacts are. So I do think that there is merit to saying, yeah, well, a temporary exemption shouldn't supersede these things. But if it does, you don't have much of a leg to stand on. To the contrary, the National Park Service has confirmed that each permit issued under the rule will be subject to the appropriate NEPA process at the time. Okay. So that does change things a little bit then. To the contrary, the National Park Service has confirmed that each permit issued under the rule will be subject to the appropriate NEPA process at the time, and has claimed a categorical exclusion for the rule itself on the ground that the rule does not directly authorize any activity. The obligation to conduct NEPA review therefore attaches to each individual special permit. Okay, that's different. That does change things here. If that is in the wording of the exemption, there's your leg to stand on for this lawsuit right there. And again, whether, not having the actual exemption in front of me, I don't know if we can find that actually. Let's see if we can find that real quick. And if this is boring to you guys, I apologize, but trust me, it is not to me. And that is why we are doing it, because I find this stuff insanely fascinating. See, so this is actually an article that I had open for when I was going to do the video portion of things. It doesn't really go into too much detail, though. I need to find the actual, what is the rule? Yes, here we go. Okay. How long is this? Oh, my God. I can't read through all of this in addition to everything else. The National Park Service is issuing a temporary amendment to regulation for the National Capital Region. The amendment will temporarily remove barriers to the effect of executive departments and agencies of the United Semi-Quincentennial Commission to appropriately plan, organize, and execute an extraordinary celebration. Right. Okay. So hold on. Let's at least find NEPA real quick. Okay. Here we go. So this is saying this rule does not constitute a major federal action significantly affecting the quality of the human environment. A detailed statement under the NEPA or the NEPA is not required. Wait, hold on. A detailed statement under the NEPA is not required because the rule is covered by a categorical exclusion. This rule creates exemptions from requirements that apply to permitting America 250 special events on NPS-administered lands in Washington, D.C. These changes are administrative and procedural in nature because they do not directly authorize any activity to occur. These changes are administrative and procedural in nature because they do not directly authorize any activity to occur in park areas. Well, White House is a national park. That does make things fascinating now, doesn't it? All America 250 events that occur on lands that are subject to the regulations in 36 CFR blah, 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 during the effective period of this rule will require a permit that will be subject to the appropriate NEPA procedures at the time. The NPS also has determined that the rule does not involve any of the extraordinary circumstances listed here that would require further analysis under the NEPA. Wait. Has determined that the rule does not involve any of the I don't know what that last sentence actually means in this regard. The NPS has also determined that the rule does not involve any of the extraordinary circumstances listed, blah, that would require further analysis on it. I mean, this sentence right here would lead me to believe that they have like a legal ground here. I don't know why this won't just fucking highlight. There we go. So yeah, all America 250 events that occur on lands that are subject to the regulations of such and such during the effective period of this rule will require a permit that will be subject to the appropriate NEPA process at that time. So lawsuit is correct then. I don't know. I mean, that would seem to me to be a pretty clear-cut case that even if they are exempt, that procedure may not have been followed if there was not an environmental survey. So I guess the original point does stand. Again, do you see why I didn't want to just do a video about this? Like, this gets so deep into all of the weeds with all of this stuff that it's hard to like condense this all into a properly structured video. But this is why we're doing it in stream form, because I'm finding this information out as we go. So yeah, I would say that if we go back to the complaint, that actually does track now, doesn't it? I'll keep the rule open here in case we have to refer back to it again. Hydra, what's up, my man? I hope this turns out to be as much of a circus as I think it will be. It's probably going to be very much like the Sphere, is what I'm thinking. I think it's going to be an outdoor version of the Sphere, just America-centric instead of Mexico-centric. So I don't know if it's really going to be much of a circus, honestly. I think it's going to be as tasteful as the UFC can be tasteful. That would be that is my official prediction. Is it going to be tasteful? Subject to your own taste, I suppose, right? I mean, do you think that the UFC has taste to begin with? But in that understanding, it will be as tasteful as they can muster, I would say. Not as adrenaline spiking as fights, but still entertaining. I appreciate it, CTE. Let's be honest, it's Trump. It won't matter whether it's technically legal or not. Yep, well, that also, of course, plays a factor now, doesn't it, Hydra? That's kind of giving away the ending of everything. But you're absolutely right. I mean, we've seen so much rampant disregard for the law. Not just, and again, people think that because I am hypercritical of this administration, that I'm not hypercritical of all power. Not so. We see missteps all the time, but this administration has been particularly brazen with the disregard for conventional law. And, you know, I mean, I say it all the time. There is no law anymore. We live in a lawless land in lawless times. So, yeah, I mean, you can bring a lawsuit. You bring it a week before the event. You really think that that's going to do anything about it? I mean, again, this is more of a stunt than anything else, but still some actual legitimacy to it, perhaps, in that regard. But, you know, I do think that there is merit to that one point, though. You know, if it is a national park, imagine if this was being held at Yellowstone National Park or any of the other national parks, Grand Tetons. You're potentially altering the terrain in a way that if you do not do an environmental survey, you will not know the repercussions of. So if that's the case, I think that should have been a rule that was followed. Obviously, the federal government said that it should be followed because that's what we just read here. But if it was not followed, then so be it, I guess, as far as the administration goes. I want to see Trump's favorite, Derek slimed, then Hokit better say something wild on the mic than Israel's greatest soldier slimed out in the main event. Okay. Yeah. Again, Justin Gaethje never said anything specifically about Israel, by the way. I think Justin Gaethje is getting lumped in with like this Israel propaganda because of Sean Strickland when he really, I think he said he didn't even care about Israel specifically, but whatever. People do it for the memes. Should have led and stopped with the national park point. Yeah, Chase, Chase is cooking right now, man. That is a fantastic point. The problem is that, yeah, you're saying you're adding all this shit, all this Trump shit into it. It makes you seem, even if you aren't, like Trump is like you're a Trump hater and you're nullified, your nullified opinion since bias. Right. Exactly. Yeah. You're nullifying your own standpoint by trapping it inside all of this other like opinion-based stuff. You're absolutely correct there, Chase. 100%. 100%. This could have been one specific claim, but if you do it that way, then you don't get all of the spectacle. And again, if you weren't here at the very start of the stream, I started this off by saying one of the main reasons that I am doing this review is because I've been following Reckless Ben and the Bricks and Minifigs situation very closely. And what Reckless Ben did was stunt journalism. And I can appreciate stunt journalism because if you are not getting justice and the law is not helping you out, then what is your other option aside from trying to garner some attention for it and hoping that public perception changes the course of action? Something like that applies here. I don't think that this is as good an application of it, unfortunately. There's laws for us, but not for them. Two-tier justice. NDT, Jesus Christ, the biggest of facts in all of American history. It's just funny to call him Goichi because it's easy. True. I'll give you that. It does work. It does work very easily. Your favorite stunt journalist is Crazy Kev. No one pulls off a stunt like Crazy Kev, considering that he's pulled off the same stunt 8,000 times, and everybody just keeps falling for it. It's a fantastic ability to have. Just today, pulling off the same stunt yet again. Yo, Beep, what's up, brother? How are you? Send location. You got it, brother.
Send me location.
There you have it. All right, let's keep running this thing down here. Because, yeah, now we're getting into the UFC part of stuff. And I know that there is some shit in here that's funny. Because, this is where we get into the normie trying to explain to someone else what cage fighting is. What is mixed martial arts? The Ultimate Fighting Championship is a mixed martial arts promotion that holds live action cage fighting events. Mixed martial arts, MMA, is a combat sport that combines elements of boxing, kickboxing, clinch fighting, stand-up grappling, particularly American folk-style wrestling, and ground grappling, particularly Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and ground strikes. Not the worst description of MMA I've ever heard. Certainly tracks, All of those judo guys feeling left out. All of those thug jitsu practitioners feeling a little left out there. Why specifically Brazilian jiu-jitsu? What about all of our Japanese jiu-jitsu practitioners? Huh? Where's Muay Thai in any of this? I didn't hear a thing about elbows. An MMA bout may conclude in one of several ways. During live action, a fighter may lose by knockout when rendered unconscious or otherwise incapacitated, by technical knockout when the referees or the ringside doctor's judgment, or when in the referees or ringside doctor's judgment, the fighter has suffered too much damage to safely continue fighting, or by submission when the fighter taps out to avoid being choked unconscious or injured by a joint lock. True. These are all true. Or when they actually do go unconscious from, being choked. Where's that? Didn't have that in there. But that's also, that's actually not bad descriptions of MMA so far. They went to the Oxford Dictionary MMA representation school. If an MMA fight does not conclude in one of those ways, its outcome is decided by ringside judges who pick a winner, most often by using a round-by-round 10-point must. Why is any of this important to this claim, by the way? Why is a description of what MMA is important to this? Professional MMA fights are typically scheduled for 3 5-minute rounds, except for title fights, which are typically scheduled for 5 5-minute rounds. These are all true statements that have absolutely nothing to do with their claims. 2 men enter into a cage, basically underwear, and proceed to fight each other to the death. Sadly, a referee stops them. A referee stops them. True. Yes, it is Thunderdome, and the claw is about as close to actual Thunderdome from the movie Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome that we've ever had. So there is some merit to what you're saying there. So far, it's a very normie-coded description of MMA, but it isn't wrong, so not too bad. I agree. But again, you're absolutely right, Hydra. But again, my point is, what does it matter about any of this? None of this actually matters to the claims at hand. They could be this could be a description of literally anything. It could be an actual carnival. It could be a musical performance. Why do we need a description of what a concert is? It has nothing to do with the impact of the environment or the exemption or any of the other things there, as far as the actual nuts and bolts of the event. All you need to know is that it's an event, period, for the claims that are being made here. You're good, Beeb. Appreciate you being here, brother. Thank you, man. MMA is notably not a form of scripted professional wrestling. Ha! Says who? Says who? You know what? I'll give it to him, though. I appreciate that. I'm still a believer in the reality of this sport, no matter how much they want us to not believe it. No matter how. Talk to Isaac Dolgarian as to whether or not this is as scripted as professional wrestling. I do appreciate that they at least acknowledge that it's not to pro wrestling levels yet. But give it time, lawsuit. Give it time. MMA is notably not a form of scripted professional wrestling. The action and the damage inflicted by and on the fighters is entirely real. I mean, did Yadier Del Valle actually get choked out? Or excuse me, other way around, rather. Did Yadier Del Valle actually choke out Isaac Dolgarian? You be the judge. They have to define the grounds for every claim. Yeah, well, fair enough, but I don't think that you need this level of detail in order to have the grounds defined. Is my point. But in the interest of thoroughness, I guess I'll grant it. It's still real. It's still real to me. Damn it! I know. I need that for the soundboard. True. Hell yeah, dude. I'll put that down on the note sheet here. It's still real to me. Got it. MMA is a sport that notably isn't supposed to be scripted like professional wrestling would be more accurate. Yeah, there you go. There you go, Hydra. We need to get you involved in the lawsuit, brother. Go in there and rewrite this thing. You need to join up with our friends at the Public Integrity Project. Stop corruption before it's too late. The Ultimate Fighting Championship, or UFC, is one of several American MMA promotion companies, and by far the largest in terms of market share. Well, there's no lie there. The UFC is owned and controlled by TKO Holdings Group Incorporated, a publicly traded corporation that also owns World Wrestling Entertainment, a professional wrestling company. That is also very true. Dada 5000 absolutely faked a minor heart attack and kidney failure while fighting Kimbo. It's all fake. Yeah. Fair enough that you can't, I'm not saying that every fight is fake, of course. Obviously not. How much of it is see, there you go. I guess that would be a distinction you actually could make, right? Is fake versus coerced. How much of it is fake? Probably not much. How much of it is coerced by referees, judges, commission, etc.? Promotion. There's your claim. Not legally, of course. The UFC holds its fights inside its proprietary octagon, an octagonal. Octagonal. And I don't think I've ever said that word out loud before. The UFC holds its fights inside a proprietary octagon, an octagonal cage made out of 6-foot-tall vinyl-coated chain-link fencing. During the active fighting, only the two fighters and a referee who may stop the fight are allowed inside of the octagon. Well, not if Conor McGregor jumps over in Bellator. President Trump has arranged for the UFC to stage an event on the White House South Lawn on his 80th birthday. This case arises because President Trump has arranged for the UFC to stage an MMA event on the South Lawn of the White House. The event, styled UFC Freedom 250, is scheduled for Sunday, June 14th. We've already gone over a lot of this stuff. The fight card is scheduled to feature 7 MMA bouts, culminating with 2 title fights. The fighters competing in these 2 main event bouts will start their walkouts inside of the Oval Office itself. So not everybody is getting an Oval Office walkout, but the 2 title fights are. How about that? It's not scripted, but you can book someone off a lot of damage in a country across the world from their home with no IV rehydration if that's what they normally do. Can't stage it, but can definitely set the favor. Yeah, there you go. Josh Koscheck faking getting hit in the head with a knee. Let's not forget that. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen plenty of. Look, Adolfo Bellato with the greatest acting performance of all time. Can you fake that? If you're Adolfo Bellato, you can. All right. So UFC president and CEO Dana White is a longtime friend and ally of Trump's and introduced Trump before Trump's speech at the 2024 Republican National Convention. Trump, for his part, routinely attends UFC events as White's guest. June 14th happens to be Trump's 80th birthday. Despite the notable date and notwithstanding his intimate relationship with Trump, White has strictly denied that the UFC Freedom 250 is meant to be a birthday celebration for the president. Instead, White has presented the event as a celebration of the 250th birthday of America. And I do believe that, that is very intentional wording. You know what I mean? Somebody told Dana White, make sure you do not say that it's for the president's birthday. You know what I mean? Because there is a federal register that says you can't do it if you say it's for that reason. It has to be for America. And also, I think that both Dana and the president want it to be for America as well, you know? They would both consider themselves good, upstanding American patriots. White has, however, admitted that the event was Trump's idea. So, there you go. There's your public-private partnership right there. There's your executive level planning right there. That legitimately actually is a potentially claim that the defense can make. You literally say this was organized, planned, and executed by a private enterprise exclusively, when you literally said that it is in conjunction as a joint venture between the federal government and the private enterprise, and the federal executive, aka the president, had the idea in the first place. Throw your suit out the window. A review of past event dates suggests that the UFC overwhelmingly holds its domestic events on Saturday nights, not Sunday nights. This is not surprising. UFC events often end well after midnight Eastern Time. Accordingly, the UFC has not held a Sunday night event in the United States in nearly 7 years. The last such event would appear to be UFC on ESPN Ngannou versus Velasquez, which aired on Sunday, February 17th, 2019. there's somebody doing their research there. I mean, fair enough, but the UFC is just because they don't do it often doesn't mean they are precluded from doing it. They're making the case, they're doing it specifically for Trump's birthday. Again, you can say that and it might be true, but there's still the other thing is still in play though. It's not a birthday event. It's just on his birthday, not on Independence Day. Well, it's not supposed to be on it. Well, it's not necessarily needing to be on Independence Day. And yes, it is on his birthday. And yes, they are saying it is completely a coincidence. But the fact that they are celebrating the country at all is why it can be written off. And I said it earlier, Hydra. If you want to believe that they're just backdooring it to be on his birthday without expressly saying it, you're probably right. But that does not mean that that makes the other part invalid. You know what I'm saying? This is all a distraction. America is about to invade Cuba. Is that really true? It's crazy that I would actually have to ask that. But we know what happened in Venezuela. All right. July 4th, 2026 is a Saturday on a holiday weekend. And unlike Sunday, June 14th is actually America's actual 250th birthday. Yet the UFC is not holding an event on that date, whether at the White House or anywhere else. They traditionally do not hold events on July 4th, by the way. So that at least is not uncommon, but kind of does make a good point right there, right? You do have an actual Saturday that this could be on, but you're choosing a different day completely coincidentally, completely out of coincidence. Of course it's not a coincidence, but it doesn't matter. If it's a celebration of the nation, it doesn't matter. This is most certainly a birthday event. People are very easily lied to. That's the thing, NDT. I don't think it's that people are very well, let me say this. Yes, people are very easily lied to. That I don't think is the issue here, though. The issue is that if the organization and the administration are both saying that it's for the celebration of the United States under America 250, then they can do it on any day that they want to. So they just happen to pick his birthday. We all know that it's for his birthday, but you can't say that it's not for America 250 is the problem. You know what I mean? You can chalk it up to the coincidence, even if we know it's not a coincidence, but there's no ground to say that that's not the truth. Legally, it might not be a birthday event, but this is just Dana swallowing Trump for his birthday. Yeah, I mean, obviously. Fucking obviously it is. America seems to be building a possible operation in Cuba, according to online analysts. Oh, Jesus, really? Oh, good Lord. More. You know, Team America World Police, baby. More. More restructuring. All right, anyway. The UFC is constructing a massive structure on the south lawn of the White House. Yes, it is. There it is. Look at it. Isn't it glorious? On May 26, 2026, the UFC began construction of a massive structure to house the UFC Freedom 250 event on the White House South Lawn. This is the thing. It is called the Claw. White has referred to the structure as the Claw. The Claw, which is constructed primarily out of steel, is 92 feet tall, 154 feet wide, and weighs 600 tons. That is a big boy. The White House executive residence, by contrast, is only 70 feet tall at its highest point. The Claw thus dwarfs the adjacent White House. It is visible from the National Mall to the south. So yes, it is quite a noticeable structure, to be sure. The Claw's principal function is to house the octagon and provide anchor points for cameras and lighting. It will serve no obvious function other than Jesus Christ. It will serve no obvious function once the event has concluded. I mean, I think that is inherently obvious. There is literally no reason for this thing other than the event. Nevertheless, on June 3rd, 2026, President Trump posted a video on TikTok in which he suggested that the Claw may never be taken down. Didgeridoo Dave was talking about that earlier. Trump inauguralized analogized. Again, another word that I don't think I've ever said out loud. Trump analogized the claw to Paris's Eiffel Tower, which, in his words, was supposed to be taken down immediately after the World's Fair. And then they said, we sort of like it. Come on, guys. Don't you think you want that in front of the White House forever? I know I do. Glorious. See it from the road. All of our kids going to visit Washington, D.C. on field trips are going to be able to take pictures in front of it. Be wonderful. Why is there a birthday cake at the event? Happy birthday, America. Just bringing it over to Trump. Happy birthday, land of the free. Blow out the candles, President Trump, representing all of America. The cage infrastructure looks like a city skylines preset that you didn't bother to decorate around. True. Yeah, just like a silhouette of the skyline. Looks so goofy, just like everything about this event. I think it actually looks pretty cool personally. Again, just being honest about my actual feelings about this whole thing, I do think it's a pretty impressive structure. But of course, that might just be my bias as a person who once worked in live entertainment. Don't quote me, but I think Miguel Diaz, the dictator of Cuba, is giving weapons to Cubans and telling them to be ready for an invasion. Really? Just BS my Cuban coworkers talked about today, so I brought it up here. Got you. Okay. All right, fair enough. Look, man, there would have been a time where that would have been like a crazy thing to think about, but under the current circumstances, what we go through on a regular basis in our day-to-day existence at this point in history, anything's possible. So if that is the truth, I mean, really, like, kind of, bro, it's a very tiny island is all I'll say, right? I mean, literally it is a small island. We already have Guantanamo Bay there. Like, I think that if we really wanted to take over Cuba, we probably could do it pretty easily. But the only thing I would say in that regard is that obviously there was the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the reason for that was because Cuba is closely aligned with Russia and other sympathetic nations to their political structure. So if we did invade Cuba, that could be a multinational incident that could be very, very... it could have very wide repercussions. So hopefully that does not happen. To facilitate construction and other preparations for the event, the Park Service has imposed a blah, blah, blah temporary closure of the ellipse and its side panels, roadways, and sidewalks. E Street and its sidewalks between blah, 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 blah. Okay, yeah, so it's a temporary closure of all of these places. That closure went into effect on May 20th and will remain in place until June 28th. Construction of the Claw and other facilities for this event is causing significant damage to White House grounds. White has estimated that it will cost $700,000 to repair the South Lawn alone. $700,000 that he said they are going to pay for, though. On information and brief, the Park Service has not prepared an environmental assessment or environmental impact statement to assess the results of damage. Plaintiffs have not been able to identify any such assessment or on any public docket. There is your major claim right there. That's what we've been talking about as potentially the one thing that has some legitimate merit in this case. The UFC plans to hold the UFC Freedom 250 weigh-ins at the Lincoln Memorial. I believe that is false from what we have heard. The weigh-ins are being held somewhere else. The press conference and I think one other promotional event are being held at the Lincoln Memorial. Unless I'm wrong about that. Maybe I am wrong. But I had heard that was a false claim that they're making there. Along with the nearby war memorials and Arlington National Cemetery, the Lincoln Memorial is one of the American Republic's most sacred monuments. The memorial's dedication statement, inscribed directly over President Lincoln's statue, reads, "In this temple, as in the hearts of the people for whom he saved the Union, the memory of Abraham Lincoln is enshrined forever." Yes, thank you, President Lincoln. All of your good work has led us to where we have gotten to right now. The memorial's south chamber is inscribed with Lincoln's address at Gettysburg, which closes with the promise that government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from this earth. Well, that is an interesting point there, isn't it? Because it certainly does feel day over day that becomes less and less true. I will certainly admit that. That I will absolutely say is a feeling that I empathize with, that the by the people, for the people certainly does seem to be diminishing over time. All this could have been avoided if we had Francis versus John. Now the heavyweight division is so mad that UFC is now having in front of lawn fight. Got you, bro. Yeah, exactly. They're having to bolster the quality, or they're backfilling the quality of heavyweight with it being at the White House because of the lack of quality in the division. I get where you're coming from. The memorial's north chamber is inscribed with, more inscriptions from Lincoln. Lincoln's inscription here is, with malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace amongst ourselves and with all nations. I like that statement. That's a really nice one. But again, in context here, I don't know how that really means much. The memorial's 18th step bears a marker. Yeah, we know what, I mean, is this just to establish that this is an important place? Like, we get it. We know that this is an important place. It's the fucking Lincoln Memorial. Yeah, it's important. Pretty goddamn important, you know? I just watched Gone with the Wind. I've been talking about this a lot recently. I just watched Gone with the Wind. You know, that's a movie that glorifies the other side of the argument. And throughout the entirety of watching that film, I couldn't help but feel conflicted knowing that this is a glorification of the wrong side. So yes, glorifying Lincoln and the right side of history, I think, is pretty well established at this venue. The Lincoln Memorial is part of a larger commemorative complex that also includes the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, a monument to the American fallen in another war, located just over 1,000 feet away. Taken as a whole, the memorial is a solemn and moving homage to this nation's greatest president, to the millions of soldiers who died to preserve the Union during the Civil War, and to the emancipation of Black Americans from slavery. Sure. Many descriptors might be applied to a UFC weigh-in. Solemn and moving are not among them. Hey, excuse me, says who? Every time that I see Alexander Volkanovski on the scale, I shed a single man tear. Instead, because each fighter faces off with his opponent just after weighing in, the events tend to be raucous, profane, and sometimes violent affairs. I would suspect that they would tone that down for the venue, but who knows? Josh Hokett could be doing Josh Hokett things at the weigh-in, so maybe there's some validity to that. But if they're just saying this event is not becoming of the venue, again, not a legal claim. Not a legally actionable claim. John and Dana are to blame for half the UFC's downfall. I mean, I would certainly say that's a little bit reductionist, but there's certainly truth to it. For instance, just a few weeks ago, at UFC 328's weigh-in, Sean Strickland called his opponent Khamzat Chimaev a son of a whore and a bitch. They have the word bitch inside of this legal document. Son of a whore. I think he called him a Chechen whore. Maybe they don't want to put that in there, but there you go. Look at that foul language that is being exhibited at the weigh-ins. At UFC 229, Conor McGregor lunged and threw. At UFC 229, Conor McGregor lunged and then threw a kick at his opponent, Habib Nurmagomedov. McGregor later referred to Nurmagomedov as a mad backwards bleep and taunted Nurmagomedov's Muslim faith by offering him whiskey. Again, a very interesting thing to be including in a legal document. More. And at UFC 178, after Daniel Cormier shoved John Jones prior to their light heavyweight title fight, a brawl broke out and spilled into the crowd. This is somebody that literally went through and picked out a bunch of YouTube videos of crazy stuff that happened at weigh-ins and just compiled a list of all of them. I do like it, though. I appreciate this little rundown of all the crazy stuff that has happened at weigh-ins before. I have money riding on this fight. People don't judge me. Which one? I won't judge you. My comment didn't go through, I guess. I said no. Oh. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes Restream doesn't pick up every YouTube comment, or YouTube doesn't post every comment, which is weird. The UFC has announced that it will be holding the UFC Freedom 250 ceremonial weigh-ins and face-offs on the evening of June 13th at the Lincoln Memorial. That, of course, is in a couple of days from now. So we'll see when that all goes down. On information and belief, defendants have authorized or otherwise allowed the UFC to use sound equipment as part of the UFC Freedom 250 ceremonial weigh-ins. They did mention sound equipment earlier on in some of the Federal Register documentation. So that does play a part here. On information and belief, the UFC intends to use such sound amplification equipment at a level that will be audible at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. All right, so it's going to be loud. If I was in Gon's training camp, I'd be telling him to watch out for Pereira's power. Thank you, Annie. Sound observation. Got you, Beeb. I'm with you, bro. Okay, so reporting published on June 4th, 2026 reveals that the UFC Freedom 250 event is not being planned, organized, and executed by any executive agency, department, or the Semi-Quincentennial Commission. I don't get this claim here. No executive department or agency is playing a significant role in the planning, organizing, or executing of UFC Freedom 250. Impossible. That is not a possible thing. The UFC selected, hired, and announced the fighters, designed and is supervising installation of the physical facilities, and will in every material sense execute the festivities on the nights of June 13th and 14th. There has to be logistical cooperation that makes this a public-private partnership, a joint venture. There's no way. The only arguable exception will be security, which the Secret Service is coordinating for all semi-quincentennial events, but neither the Secret Service nor any other agency or department is responsible for the substance of the event. What about if they do a flyover? Will that not be executive level? I mean, by nature of executive level individuals being at the event, does that not constitute partnership of some sort? This is a very, very shoestring thin claim that they are making here. Most damningly, reporting published on June 4th, 2026 has established that no official semi-quincentennial commission is planning, organizing, or executing the event either. I mean, you literally just said that. There are currently two entities competing for the role of America's official semi-quincentennial commission. The first, and the one with by far the stronger claim, is the congressionally authorized commission known colloquially as America 250. This is the commission identified by name in the America 250 temporary rule. The second is a public-private partnership created pursuant to executive order known as Freedom 250. Okay. Freedom 250 is not an official commission. It is instead a wholly owned subsidiary of the National Park Foundation, the National Park Service's official congressionally chartered charity. Previously, Freedom 250 was understood to be organizing to be the organizing entity responsible for UFC Freedom 250. For instance, reporting published by USA Today on June 2nd, 2026 suggested as such. But reporting published by MS Now on June 4th, 2026 revealed otherwise. A Freedom 250 spokesperson quoted in that reporting, quote, said the White House fight billed as UFC Freedom 250 is not affiliated with the organization and shares only its branding. Well, I mean, I guess you're going to have to make some actual proof in court that you can prove that beyond reporting in a newspaper, though. You're going to need to say more than just you saw that in the paper. That person could have misspoke. There could have been things that they didn't know about even as an official. There could have been prior arrangements made behind the scenes after the reporting was done, or, in some other capacity. There's so many different ways to say, this is not valid. In other words, not even the more legally dubious of the two semi-quincentennial commissions is responsible for planning, organizing, or executing UFC Freedom 250. The event is, in formal terms, a private undertaking. This is where I think it all falls apart for you, man. Because they're definitely going to be able to say that either the America 250 Commission exemption, or, that it's either covered under America 250 or under Freedom 250. There's no way that they're going to just be like, no, it doesn't apply to either of those things. Zuffa Boxing got sued by another boxing promotion for billions too. I saw that. I did see that Zuffa Boxing was getting sued over something. This lawsuit has so much merit, Dana and UFC are screwed. Brother, they're shaking in their boots right now, I bet. The UFC Freedom 250 event is being planned, organized, and executed with all the hallmarks of a private for-profit sporting event. In substance, as well as formally, UFC Freedom 250 is being planned and operated as a private, for-profit, motivated sports promotion. The event is privately financed. Reports have estimated the cost of the event to be around $60 million, but the UFC has denied that any taxpayer dollars are being spent to front those costs. White, in particular, has claimed that the UFC is eating the whole thing and that he is spending a shitload of money. More swearing in this legal document. So yeah, it's a privately funded event, but it is in cooperation with the federal government, dude. Despite White's claim to the contrary, the event will likely be profitable for the UFC and its partners. White has estimated that the UFC will lose $30 million on the event, but recent reporting indicates that the event capacity will be over 4,000 people and that the UFC will control up to a third of the seats. Another third will be allocated to the White House personnel and families. The remaining third of the seats will be available to service members for free, but only so long as they have a waist-to-height ratio under 0.55. That is hilarious to me that there is a height and weight ratio requirement and satisfy various other fitness test requirements. Yeah, you have to be in physical peak condition to be attending this show. If you are a fatty, sorry. Get the fuck out of here with your fat ass. No Hokit at the press conference is why UFC continues to be trash, no fun. Hokit's going to be at the press conference. They revised that. They said that Hokit and Lewis were left off, but then they got re-added back on. So Hokit will be there. Where were we at here? Oh, yeah. So the UFC has denied that it is selling any of its shares of the 1,300 seats, but recent reporting indicates that the UFC is offering sponsorship packages priced at between $1 and $1.5 million per head. Sponsors reportedly will have access to the White House event, i.e., a seat, VIP access to weigh-ins and press conferences, admission to a pre-fight concert by the Zac Brown Band, and may also receive access to parts of the White House complex and buildings. Wow. Sponsorship packages notably have not been reported to include any conventional sponsorship benefits, such as advertising or promotional opportunities. The packages thus appear to be dressed up and extraordinarily expensive tickets. So yeah, fair enough. I mean, I would think that you'd want it to be that way. You'd want it to not be actual sponsorships. Trump can't attend his own birthday party. That's messed up. Oh, no, he'll be there. He'll be there. But he can attend his own birthday party. He just can't call it a birthday party. It's an America birthday party on a date well before America's birthday. It's a pre-birthday birthday party for the country that also happens to be his birthday. Come on, Beeb, keep up. If the event's reported $60 million cost is accurate, the UFC would need to sell just 40 of its 1.5 million sponsorship packages to break even, without even accounting for its many other sources of revenue, such as advertising or broadcaster incentives. That actually is going to be an interesting question that I have, is how much advertising is going to be on this event? When we are watching on Paramount Plus, which is the premium streaming service that we all pay for, how much advertising are we going to get on this event that is for the people? I don't know. We'll have to find out. Beyond direct profits, the UFC is openly boasting about the enormous long-term commercial benefits it will realize from hosting an event at two of the nation's most iconic monuments. Mark Shapiro, the president of UFC's parent company TKO, recently remarked, "This is the greatest earned marketing tool of all time. It's a once-in-a-generation moment. The kind of attention, awareness, and sampling we're going to get from audiences around the world on that day alone will be more than we could get in an entire year." Again, merit to that. Certainly merit to that. But none of this has any bearing on the actual claim here, I would say. That's what I'm worried about. There are only 7 fights, so I wonder how much advertising they're going to squeeze in. Theoretically, they shouldn't be squeezing in any advertising. If this is for the people, if this is for America's birthday, as it's supposed to be, and we are the Americans that make up America, should this not be a celebration for all of us devoid of advertising? I would think that that would be meritorious to say that there should be zero advertising. There should be no advertising at the claw. There should be no advertising on the broadcast. Will that be the case? Probably not. But either way, this claim here, that's the thing. There shouldn't be any advertising for 2 reasons. 1, the reason I just stated. 2, what I just read. The exposure alone is worth its weight in gold times 1 billion. The exposure that this event is going to have is going to be unlike any other mixed martial arts event ever, and possibly ever be. Aside from, as I have posited, MMA on the moon, which I think could happen at some point once we colonize it. But that being said, aside from MMA on the fucking moon, there is not going to be a bigger MMA event than this, possibly in the history of the world. So that being said, you are already getting your residual profit from this in the form of advertising. So I do think that there is merit to that as a statement, but that as a legal claim does not hold muster based on what you're actually alleging in the course of this lawsuit. Bro just confidently pondered if there will be no ads. Sorry to break it to. No. I think there will be, but I'm just saying it shouldn't be. This is being brought to you straight by Prime and OnlyFans, and it doesn't get much more American than that. There will definitely be ads. Yeah, no. I'm sure that there will be ads, but should there be ads? No. There should not be ads. I'm curious how much advertising there's going to be, but I would suspect that there is going to be advertising for sure. Should there be, though? No. I don't think that there should be. Again, honestly, based on the stipulations of the America 250 portion of the exemption, you would want there to not be ads so that as to not make it more of a for-profit endeavor than it already is. So it would behoove the UFC and TKO to not have advertising, and Paramount Plus, but not to be the case, of course. Hell yeah, Tyler. Work out the rest of that shift, bro. I'm glad that you were rocking with your boy while you're finishing up. The UFC's principal American broadcast partner also stands to benefit. The UFC recently sold 7 years of its broadcast rights to Paramount Skydance Corp, CBS's parent company, for $7.7 billion. $7.7 billion. UFC cards typically feature both a preliminary card with up-and-coming fighters and a main card with more established fighters competing to move up the rankings or at major events for a championship belt. The preliminary and main cards are often broadcast on different platforms. Often? No. They're usually broadcast on the same platform. In the case of UFC Freedom 250, reporting indicates that some preliminary fights will be broadcast to the general public on CBS, but the much more high-profile main card featuring 2 championship fights will be available only on Paramount's subscription streaming platform, Paramount Plus. Now, if that's the case, that's not great. That is definitely not great. But have we actually seen that to be true, though? Because I thought that the entire thing was being broadcast on CBS. But yeah, that's not a great deal there. 13-hour mark? Get it, brother. I have some things to do. Everybody, please stay. Hey, Beeb, appreciate you always, Beeb. Thanks for hanging out with us, brother. Appreciate you, bro. They'll just have ICE ads and military recruitment ads and Coast Guard ads. Meat Rocket, that actually might track. That actually might track, dude. You might not be wrong about that, Meat Rocket. There might be an abundance of those. Technically wasn't wrong when it was on ESPN, ESPN Plus, ESPN2, Disney, Hulu Plus all at once. Yeah, but I mean, but were they all exclusive to those platforms at any given time is the thing. Like, could you only see the prelims on one of those places and not the other place? Look, we know this to be true for other organizations, but generally the UFC will do it all in one place. Well, actually, I guess I take it back. Pay-per-view, back in the pay-per-view era, it might have been on ESPN pay-per-view, but prelims were on regular ESPN and main card was on pay-per-view. So I guess you're not wrong. Good point from Meat Rocket. Didn't the UFC used to show a lot of Go Army ads? Yeah, absolutely. And they expressly, they said that military and ICE recruitment was specifically purchasing ad time on the UFC, knowing that the audience's demographics skew towards younger male audiences. So, yeah, they probably are going to have a lot of that kind of advertising. The preliminary, we read that. In the case of UFC Freedom 250, reporting indicates that some preliminary fights will be broadcast to the general public on CBS. Yeah, we read that. Paramount Plus subscriptions start at $8.99 per month. UFC Freedom 250 thus provides Paramount with a banner opportunity to begin recouping some of its extraordinary outlay for UFC broadcast rights. That actually is a legitimately good point right there. If the main card is only on Paramount Plus, then that is a ridiculous boon for Paramount Skydance. The amount of people that might be signing up for new Paramount subscriptions based on this event, if that is the way that this is structured, that is a money-making operation to be sure. To be sure. Those Go Army ads were so cringe they'd make the Army look like some video game. Brother, that's how you attract a certain demographic that would join the Army, though. So, cringe or not, guarantee you it worked for some people. The advertisers, too, stand to benefit. Sure thing. UFC events typically feature prominent advertiser branding on the octagon floor and side padding. Have we seen that, though? I don't think that they have the Monster logo on the octagon for this event. It was, the cage at UFC's May 9th, 2026 event in Newark, New Jersey was typical. It featured advertising for Monster, an energy drink, Poly Market, a prediction market, Stake, a gambling platform, Aviator, a video game. Aviator is not a video game. Aviator is the fucking glasses company, right? Isn't Aviator that? Or is Aviator actually a video game? I thought that it was the glasses company. There's Aviators on Steam. I don't think that Aviator is a video game. Aviator UFC sponsor. Aviator okay, I guess it is a video game. My bad. Aviator, the viral online crash game created by iGaming software Spribe, is an official global marketing partner of the UFC. Well, why didn't it come up when I tried to search it? Say it's a mobile game? No, it's an online game. Oh, here we go. Aviator is a new kind of social multiplayer game consisting of an increasing curve that can crash at any time. Oh, I think I've seen games like this before. I did not know that this was what this was. So it's a gambling game. It's a gambling video game. Huh. Okay. I've seen that advertising. I've seen that logo 800 times. I for the longest time thought it was for the glasses. I thought it was for Aviator, the company that makes Aviator-style sunglasses. Yeah, Aviators are a style of Ray-Bans. Exactly. That's what I thought it was. But apparently it's a video game. Never heard of Aviator games. Yeah, no, I mean, but you've probably seen it, even if your brain didn't recognize it. Because, yeah, Aviator... It's that red logo. It's the red... Yeah, it's that. It's the red airplane logo. I know, I mean, I've seen it a million times on the Octagon. I guess they're also a WWE sponsor. So yeah, Monster, Polymarket, Steak, Aviator, and at least 5 separate alcohol brands among other brands. And there you go, the Octagon floor. Look at all of that branding. They are not wrong. There's Aviator right there. Aviator, Black Rifle Coffee, Steak, UFC on Paramount, Monster, Polymarket, Toyo Tires back here, Bud Light over here, Corona over here, Monaco over here, Budweiser down there. So much advertising. Is it Mandela effect, you think? Similar advertisements run at weigh-ins at the UFC Vegas 118 weigh-in on June weigh-in in June of 2026. Advertisements for Paramount, Meta, and MMA Junkie prominently appeared behind the fighters. Bro, these guys really thought that the MMA Junkies fucking watermark was an advertising. It was like an advertisement. That is, wow, dude. Your normie is definitely showing there. They literally saw this image and thought that the MMA Junkies watermark was an advertisement. That's really funny. Okay. But yeah, I mean, they're not wrong about Meta and Paramount. But it's pretty funny that they think that that's advertising. That's literally just MMA Junkies watermark. There you go. Look at that. Oh, and I guess Crypto.com is a presenting partner. How about that? At UFC Freedom 250, the UFC's advertisers will have the opportunity to have such advertising prominently displayed in intimate proximity to the White House. These advertisers will similarly have the chance to promote themselves at the weigh-in at the Lincoln Memorial. In particular, one of UFC Freedom 250's leading brand partners is Crypto.com, the Singaporean cryptocurrency exchange. Crypto.com has announced that it will be providing the cryptocurrency equivalent of $1 million in performance bonuses to the fighters. And Crypto.com's logo has been splashed across materials promoting the event, materials that are not subtle about exploiting the White House imagery for commercial purposes. Look at that. Doesn't get much more commercial purposes than that. That's the White House in the background. That's Crypto.com up front. And that's a whole bunch of AI slop. Fortune favors the bold. True. Indeed. Fortune's going to be favoring the bold at this event, most definitely. I wonder if anybody's going to be holding a Monster can, you know? Maybe the president will crack a Modelo. He's not a drinker. In sum, the UFC, its parent company TKO, its broadcast partner Paramount, and its advertisers are all treating UFC Freedom 250 like they would any other UFC event, as a business opportunity. Or, as the president of TKO put it, as the greatest earned marketing tool of all time. The hallmarks of a for-profit sporting spectacle pervade the event. VIP access offered at premium prices, broadcasting on a subscription-only commercial streaming platform, a private corporate promoter, private financing of the build-out, and private receipt of the proceeds. True. I mean, all of these are true statements to all of these things, I would say. Diego's shorts have the Monster logo on them. You've seen his Freedom 250 shorts? Did they actually show that? Do they actually have the Monster logo on them? That'd be wild if it's true. By authorizing UFC Freedom 250's use of the South Lawn and Lincoln Memorial, the associated access restrictions and closures, and the erection of the claw, all without congressional authorization or environmental review, defendants have injured plaintiffs. These are the injuries that these plaintiffs have received from the UFC and this event. They posted all of them. They all have the Monster logo on them. That is ridiculous, dude. That's crazy. Yeah, so there you go. There's your advertising. Plastering the Monster logo all over the event. Have we seen if the actual octagon has the Monster logo on it? Yeah, they don't have the floor on that one yet. I know that there were pictures that were posted recently of the floor actually being in place. Hold on a second. I know that MMA Orbit has been all over this. So, yeah, there it is lit up, but you can't see it. They showed a picture of it earlier, I think today. Here we go. I don't know. Yeah, no, that's that same picture. Yeah. So I guess we don't know if they actually are going to have the Monster logo on it yet. Crazy. The non-Chads don't get Monster logo. True. Yeah. Obviously, Dominic Cruz has a lot to say about that. Defendants have authorized UFC Freedom 250 pursuant to the America 250 exemption. That authorization encompasses the event's use of the South Lawn and Lincoln Memorial, the ongoing associated construction, including the claw, and the resulting park and road closures and access restrictions. As set forth above and below, such authorization is unlawful in several respects. Through their unlawful authorization decisions, defendants have injured and are injuring plaintiffs. Plaintiff Susan Douglas. Defendants' actions have inflicted and continue to inflict aesthetic, physical, expressive, and procedural injuries on plaintiff Douglas. Douglas, who moved to Washington, D.C. in 1969, attended high school in the district and college at American University. She worked for several years in the intelligence community and lived in Germany for a time in connection with that work, but has otherwise lived exclusively in Washington, D.C. area for over 50 years. She currently lives in Alexandria, Virginia, and is retired. Over her decades of residency in the D.C. region, Douglas has very frequently visited President's Park and the Lincoln Memorial. She cherishes those spaces for their aesthetic beauty and powerful symbolism of American ideal of, in President Lincoln's words, government of, by, and for the people. In her retirement, Douglas devoted herself to activism and organizing, including, in particular, activism and organizing aimed at preserving the physical beauty and cultural sanctity of the national capital and its monuments. As part of her organizing and activism work, Douglas has helped to plan and organize and has participated in a number of recent protests and other actions near the White House and Lincoln Memorial. So she's saying that just by nature of her being in the proximity of this event, she is being harmed dramatically. Physical harm, aesthetic, physical, all of these harms. On October 24th, 2025, Douglas protested the illegal destruction of the East Wing outside the White House. The illegal destruction, so there you go, another claim that the East Wing was destroyed illegally. On February 11th, 2026, Douglas attended the Walk for Peace at and around the Lincoln Memorial and served for 5 hours as a voluntary safety marshal. On March 22nd, as part of planning for the No Kings 3 protest, including all of these things here, really makes it seem like you are an operative. You're both an operative and an op of the, you're an operative against and an op of the current administration. Because, yeah, putting in No Kings protest in there, obviously you know what side of the political aisle she's on with that one. Douglas helped to scout a protest march route from Memorial Bridge to the Lincoln Memorial on to Constitution Gardens and then passed by the White House to access the D.C. Metro. On March 28th, Douglas joined 8,000 others in marching that route for No Kings 3, which included stopping at the Lincoln Memorial and taking pictures in front of its iconic facade. On April 7th, Douglas protested the illegal war in Iran. You see, again, illegal war, illegal East Wing destruction. These are all legal claims that you're making that you cannot back up with this lawsuit specifically. Douglas protested the illegal war in Iran outside the White House. On May 1st, Douglas attended the May Day Free D.C. protest at the Washington Monument and marched holding a large canvas replica of the United States Constitution. What does any of this have to do with anything? Yes, she really likes Washington, D.C., is what we're getting out of this. Okay, she protested. Last break, how bad is this lawsuit verbiage? I'll check the VOD and read it myself. It's actually written pretty well, but it's just the actual claims themselves are not very, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of leg to stand on for some of these claims. But, we've been going for over 2 hours now, so yes, there's plenty to go through, Sanjay. By all means, listen back and let me know your thoughts in the Discord for sure. Or in the comments of the video, actually. All in all, Douglas has visited the White House and national areas at least one time per week since this spring, before construction for UFC Freedom 250 began. Douglas has firm, concrete plans to visit President's Park and the Lincoln Memorial in the coming weeks. On June 8th, Douglas will attend the Moral Monday protest. She's like a professional protester, this lady. Adjacent to the White House, right? On June 9th, she'll be at the White House for this thing. She's going to be at the White House bunch. Douglas will walk across the Memorial Bridge to the Lincoln Memorial to protest President Trump, his disfigurement of the National Mall. Oh, they're actually doing a protest of this event. So wait, hold on. I skipped over that part. Let me rewind here. Douglas has firm, concrete plans to visit President's Park and the Lincoln Memorial in the coming weeks. On June 8th, Douglas will attend the Moral Monday protest, adjacent the White House. On June 9th, Douglas will be at the White House area to do scouting and preparation work for a protest planned for June 14th. On the evening of June 13th, Douglas will walk across the Memorial Bridge to the Lincoln Memorial to protest President Trump, his disfigurement of the National Mall, and the UFC Freedom 250 weigh-ins. And on June 14th, President Trump's birthday, Douglas will attend an anti-Trump protest she is currently planning and organizing. She has been engaged in planning the protest for 2 weeks. So, all right, well, get ready for protesting of the White House card. Maybe Sean Strickland will be out there with her, right? Sean Strickland apparently not able to go to the event, but he said he's going to be there. Maybe he'll be out there protesting with her. During her recent past visits to the White House and National Mall, Douglas has observed the construction connected to UFC Freedom 250, including, in particular, the so-called claw currently being erected on the south lawn. She expects to observe the same structures during her planned future visits on at least the 8th, 9th, 13th, and 14th. For Douglas, the erection of those structures, particularly the claw, is disfiguring the iconic memorial landscape of downtown Washington, D.C. Douglas has observed that the claw dwarfs the adjacent White House and is visible from the National Mall. Douglas finds the claw aesthetically hideous and its erection next to the White House grotesque, particularly when juxtaposed with the now ruined East Wing. So she's saying legitimately that she don't like how it looks, and this is causing her grievous, pain physically and aesthetically. She's being caused aesthetic pain by the claw. Okay. The erection of the claw and other structures for UFC Freedom 250 is causing and will continue to cause Douglas aesthetic injury by diminishing the personal enjoyment, experience of beauty, and feelings of national pride she previously experienced when observing the White House. She no longer can feel national pride because of this. You see the UFC in front of the White House, all of your love for your country just drains from your body. No one cared about JFK's sex room he built. But that was inside of the house, though. You know what I mean? That was if JFK had his sex room on the lawn of the White House, maybe somebody might have had something to say about it. But admittedly, it was a different time when he was president. I have a feeling she never really had national pride. Oh, no. NDT, on the contrary, she has great feelings of patriotism, just on the different side of the political aisle, which is something I certainly acknowledge. That I would never be a person to say. Of all people, and this is certainly not someone that I agree with on most things, but I believe it was Joe Biden who once said that he never questions people's commitment to what they think is correct and right. And that is something I agree with. I think that all people do believe generally that they are doing the right thing and that they have the best interests of themselves and their country at heart for the most part. Now, granted, there are evil people, and I acknowledge that that is true. But when it comes to the general political landscape, people on the far left and people on the far right both believe that they are doing the right thing and that their way of thinking is the right way of thinking. Unfortunately, both of them are wrong. So I don't think that she is not a patriot. She certainly would say that she is, but she just feels differently than the people on the other side. And I'm proud to be an American. Yeah, Lee Greenwood is still performing. I heard a lot of people, musical acts, all dropped out of performing at at America 250, but not Lee Greenwood. He's still performing. And Vanilla Ice. What a great concert that would be. Good Lord, I can't wait. Zach Brown Band, Lee Greenwood, and Vanilla Ice. Sounds like a hot ticket to me. Douglas similarly anticipates that the erection of structures for the weigh-ins at the Lincoln Memorial will cause her aesthetic injury when she visits that memorial on the evening of June 13th. She's anticipating being injured aesthetically. She is anticipating aesthetic injury before it's even happened. Douglas travels to and around downtown Washington by metro and on foot. Important to note. Douglas is nearly 70 years old and has painful osteoarthritis in both knees. Last year, she underwent 6 months of physical therapy for her knees and received injections of Orthovisc to replace lost cartilage. Her medical providers have informed her that she should expect to have one or both knees replaced in the coming years. So she's so much of a patriot that she is still going to be walking around D.C. even needing both of her knees replaced. See? So NDT, touche. UFC Freedom 250 related closures and access restrictions described above have injured and will continue to injure Douglas by causing her to suffer physical pain. Okay. Look, If we're really trying to stretch here, if we're really trying to contort ourselves into all kinds of pretzels, maybe a little bit of an argument there. You know, I walk around DC all the time. These obstructions are going to make it so it's harder for me to walk, and I got bad knees. I've heard worse claims and lawsuits. Those access restrictions make it difficult to anticipate how best to navigate the National Mall and President's Park on any given day, and have caused her to have to take circuitous routes different from those she planned to reach her destination. She is committed to continuing her activist and organizing work, notwithstanding the pain walking causes her, and the closures and access restrictions will subsequently magnify the pains that she suffers. Well, there you go. Remember how that one streamer was yelling at me for liking the White House card, and he was like, I'm an American and I love this country. His most favorite song must be that Proud to Be an American song. To be fair, it is a legitimate banger, though. It is a legitimate banger of a song. The chorus really does take it home. As I've said, I used to, one of my old jobs, when I would get out, we had lunch at noon, and there was a radio station that played, they still, I think, play classic rock here where I live. And every day at noon, they would play that song. So when I was going into my car to start my lunch break, every day I would hear that song. And I was like, man, could you not just play something different for me to start my lunch break? But either way, it was still cool, though, because that song is a legit pop. Let's see. What did we say here? The closures and access restrictions will also have also injured and will continue to injure Douglas by burdening her activism and organizing work and free expression. In particular, as part of the protests she organizes, she and other activists routinely employ props. For instance, the canvas replica of the Constitution for the May Day protest. No one's forcing you to employ props. What are you, fucking Carrot Top? For the June 14th protest, she and other activists intend to display caricature-style papier-mâché figures of President Trump, Defense Secretary Hegseth, and other administration figures inside a bamboo cage. Again, no one is forcing you to do this. It is your right to do this, but no one is forcing you to. Alongside that display, they plan to erect a sign reading, "The only cage we need." Oh, guys, get ready. We just got the hand tipped to us. The protest is not only going to have people out there with signs, it's going to have a bamboo cage with Trump, Hegseth inside of it, and it's going to say the only cage we need. We don't need an octagon and cage fighting. The only cage we need is Trump and Hegseth behind bamboo. Get ready. Get ready, people. Such props help them to send a more powerful, effective symbolic message by attracting significant public and media attention. For instance, their props were photographed and published by several news outlets after the No Kings 3 protest. So garnering eyes on the cause, much like certain lawsuits I could name. Yeah, I still like the song. I have a soft spot for it. Back in elementary school, we would hear that song so much. True. But I actually read somewhere that it's a form of propaganda imprinting on the youth. I mean, you could, yeah, I guess. I mean, but you could say that about any song that glorifies the country. You know what I mean? That one's, I think, a little bit like the answer I say is yes, but at the same time, it's not the song itself; it's how it's utilized. You know what I mean? Because to write a catchy song and to happen to want to write a catchy song about your country, that is not inherently propagandist, but if you're utilizing it to say you should too be a proud American, then perhaps some claim there. Because, Arlo Guthrie was it Woody Guthrie? I forget. One of the Guthries, Guthrie or Guthrie's son, who wrote, "This land is your land, this land is my land. This land was made for you and me," that song. He was a pretty far left activist, but some would say that song could be propaganda. You know what I mean? Like, it's how you use it, I would say. "This land is our land" is best. It's another great song for sure. Definitely one of the great American folk songs. I would certainly agree. That's true. I just thought it was an interesting connection. Wasn't trying. Oh no, yeah, you're fine, man. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I acknowledge that, and you're not wrong though. I mean, if somebody utilizes it for propagandist purposes, then sure. And I would probably venture to say that Lee Greenwood himself would be okay with propagandizing that song. I think that he has benefited tremendously from it being used as a tool of propaganda. So, yeah, I think that tracks. But just inherently, it doesn't have to be, I guess was my point. But anyway. UFC Freedom 250 closures and access restrictions make it far more making it far more difficult to plan for and execute transportation of large props on foot. The fights at the White House are making it so that this 70-year-old lady can't walk around with her oversized papier-mâché props. Certainly, this is grounds for closure. These props are heavy and are difficult to move because of Douglas's osteoarthritis. She's a lady who needs knee replacements, and she's lugging around bamboo cages. The access restrictions have significantly increased the difficulty, burdening her ability to organize and engage in First Amendment protected expression. No one is limiting your First Amendment expression abilities by having the event. Like, no one is saying that you can't do those things. You can still do those things, but if they are making it harder for you, that's not their problem. Sad to say. If they have an event that is going, again, these are all claims that I don't think bolster the actual core argument here. Chase Parton earlier in this stream, Chase cooking so immensely tremendously by saying all of this stuff that they are putting, this thing is 32 pages long. All of this external additional fluff is just that. You had one argument that was so solidly concrete, the NEPA, and whether or not they did an environmental survey. That's all you needed. But instead, we're talking about Miss Douglas and her osteoarthritis and her knee replacements because of her papier-mâché props. Do you see the problems here? As far as bogging this down with a bunch of things that are going to make this seem more fluff and puffery than it needs to be. The access restrictions have significantly increased the difficulty, burdening her ability to organize and engage. Yeah, we read that. All right. Douglas has personally participated in opportunities to comment publicly on projects that affect the physical and cultural landscape of downtown Washington. For instance, on June 4th, she testified at a hearing on the planned Triumphal Arch at the National Capital Planning Commission. So she's active in her voice being heard as far as how Washington, D.C. looks aesthetically. I think my most favorite one is the one that ends with From Sea to Shining Sea. Wasn't it called? Yeah, America the Beautiful. Absolutely, yeah. From sea to shining sea. Yeah, absolutely. America the Beautiful is a great song. I love all patriotic songs because I am proud to be an American too. I am okay with being propagandized to an extent because I love this country. But that is not tantamount to love of the government of this country. Had there been an opportunity to testify or otherwise provide public comment in opposition to UFC Freedom 250, including in particular the disfigurement of the White House facade and destruction of the White House South Lawn, Douglas would have done so. Defendants' failure to provide an opportunity for Douglas and other members of the public to provide such public comment has inflicted a procedural damage or procedural injury on Douglas. Okay. Interesting way to frame that because they didn't have a say in it. I mean, again, there might be some very small, roundabout, stretchy way of making that true because it's like it is public land. But again, you're having to do backflips and pretzel yourself to make it the case. All right, well, that was Miss Douglas. Let's hear about Mr. Romano over here. Plaintiff Paul Romano. Not the Paul Romano who did Mastodon's album art. Shout out to that Paul Romano. Defendants' actions have inflicted and continue to inflict dignitary, aesthetic, and procedural injuries on plaintiff Romano. So this is all his backstory here. Romano is a Vietnam War veteran and served the United States Air Force from 1969 through 1973 as a medevac crew member. He retired as a sergeant. Well, thank you for your service, sir. After leaving the military, Romano attended college, worked in private industry, and served as a police officer for the Department of Defense. As part of that latter work, from 2011 to 2012, he was assigned to drive civilian, military, and intelligence personnel throughout Afghanistan. He is now largely retired, volunteers, and drives for a rideshare company. Romano's family moved to Arlington, Virginia in 1961. Since then, with the exemption of military service in Vietnam and Afghanistan, he has lived in the Washington, D.C. area. He has been active in his community and previously ran for the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. He ran as a Republican. Okay, so they put that in there to let everybody know this is not partisan to him. He's a Republican on that, or, he leans that way, or at least did at one time. But even he, on that side of the political aisle, does not appreciate the destruction of the aesthetics of the lawn of the White House. In his current work as a rideshare driver and to visit family, Romano drives along the National Mall and past the Lincoln Memorial several times a week. He believes that the monument there, including the Vietnam Veterans Memorial and Lincoln Memorial, are sacred spaces. So he's out here doing rideshare. He sees the Lincoln Memorial and the Vietnam Veterans Memorial and thinks to himself, damn, that is awesome. I am proud to be an American every time that I drive past here. In particular, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial honors several men Romano knew personally, grew up with, and went to school with who were killed in that war. Fair point. He has visited the memorial twice and has found both visits to be enormously difficult emotionally. I can imagine. Romano considered the Vietnam Veterans Memorial quiet tranquility to be among its most moving and powerful features. That tranquility both honors the fallen and allows those who have come to pay their respects an opportunity to reflect and remember without interruption. True. I can understand. I understand where he's coming from with this. Romano understands that the UFC Freedom 250 weigh-ins are likely to be loud due both to their nature and likely use of sound amplification equipment. The weigh-ins are therefore likely to disturb the tranquility of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, which is located not far away in the same monumental complex. So he's saying that you go to the weigh-ins and you get Josh Hokett yelling expletives inside of the Lincoln Memorial. Vietnam Veterans Memorial is affected. This is an injury to his personage. Romano considers such disturbance of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, otherwise permanently and legally mandated tranquility, to be a grave desecration. Again, I mean, I think he has a point there. But if it's legally authorized, I don't think that there's much they can do about it. Defendants, by authorizing UFC Freedom 250 to use the Lincoln Memorial for purposes that will disturb the monument's tranquility, have accordingly inflicted a dignitary injury upon Romano. Okay, so that's the injury of his dignity, is the disturbance of tranquility. Romano also cherishes the Lincoln Memorial itself as a moving and powerful tribute to the service members who fell in the Civil War. True. In part because of his appreciation for the Lincoln Memorial, Romano has spoken out against and protested the planned Memorial Bridge Triumphal Arch, which, in Romano's view, will interrupt and deface the physical landscape currently defined by the Lincoln Memorial on one end and Arlington National Cemetery on the other. On June 4th, Romano testified at the National Capital Planning Commission in opposition of the arch. All right, so I guess that's a different thing. What is the Memorial Bridge Triumphal Arch? Like an Arc du Triomphe, like the one that the one in France? Yeah, I guess so. Where was the Where's the arc? Oh, this is about something else. This is about what we were talking about. That was about the shooting at the press correspondence. There you go. This rendering shows a street-level view of President Trump's triumphal arch with Arlington Memorial Cemetery in the background. One nation under God. Okay. I mean, I guess if he doesn't like it, he doesn't like it. Romano considers the Lincoln Memorial's use for a private, for-profit sporting event to be both an aesthetic travesty and an offense to his dignity, that of other service members, and the monument itself. As part of his work as a driver, Romano has driven by the claw structure under construction on the White House lawn 10 to 15 times. Romano finds the claw aesthetically and symbolically disgusting. Its presence on the South Lawn ruins what is otherwise one of the most enjoyable parts of his work as a driver, the opportunity to appreciate the aesthetic beauty and coherence of President's Park, the White House, and the monuments on the National Mall as he drives by them. So brother is saying that his drive is affected tremendously by all of this brouhaha, all of the hoopla. Is making it so that he cannot enjoy his Uber driving in peace, basically. Defendants, by authorizing UFC Freedom 250 and the Claw, have accordingly inflicted aesthetic injury on Romano. Romano has not been afforded the opportunity to testify about UFC Freedom 250, the Claw, and associated construction, or the weigh-in at the Lincoln Memorial. Romano would have testified given the opportunity. Defendant's failure to provide any opportunity for Romano and other members of the public to provide such testimony or public comment has inflicted a procedural injury upon Romano, same as Miss Douglas. All right, so here are the counts of violation of the NPS regulations. These, again, I believe are the most strong actual claims that they have in this document. Plaintiffs incorporate all allegations set forth above and below as though set forth in this paragraph. Okay. The National Park Service and the Department of the Interior are agencies within the meaning of USC 5 whatever. Defendants' decisions authorizing UFC Freedom 250's fights to occur on the South Lawn and the weigh-in to occur at the Lincoln Memorial, and authorizing the associated construction of event facilities, including in particular the Claw, are final agency actions subject to judicial review under USC blah 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 blah. Under the Capital Region Regulation, special events, including specifically any and all athletic events, may be held in President's Park or the Lincoln Memorial only pursuant to a valid permit issued by the regional director. The UFC Freedom 250 event at the White House and the Lincoln Memorial weigh-ins do not satisfy the Capital Region Regulations' usual criteria for a special event permit to issue. Among other issues, the regulation authorizes special sporting events only on the ellipse, not the South Lawn, and does not authorize special sporting events at the Lincoln Memorial under any circumstances. So again, this is the biggest crux of the argument here. Is this event covered by America 250 or Freedom 250? Accordingly, defendants' authorization decisions necessarily rested on the America 250 exemption set forth. This is basically just a summation of everything we've already read. That exemption extends only to special events planned, organized, and executed by executive departments and agencies or the Semi-Quincentennial Commission for the celebration of the 250th anniversary of American independence. UFC Freedom 250 is not being planned, organized, and executed by executive departments and agencies or the Semi-Quincentennial Commission. Rather, both formally and in all practical terms, UFC Freedom 250 is a private, for-profit fighting promotion planned, organized, and executed by a private company. As set forth above, the UFC, its broadcast partners, and its advertisers are planning, organizing, and executing all material aspects of the event except security. Hey, Lachlan, what's up, brother? Sorry you're late. Bro, you are all good. We are just wrapping up, getting close to the end of this document. Go back and watch the rest of the VOD if you're interested in all of the reading of this thing. We've gone through almost the whole thing at this point, and you can draw your own conclusions as to how valid you think it is, but I've kind of made the point that I think that it is tenuous at best. And also, really, they kneecap themselves right here, saying that executing all material aspects of the event except for security. Literally, the defense can just come back and say, okay, well, security then. Security is our involvement. Security is our federal involvement in this. If all that it takes is a public-private joint venture, and we only need to be involved in some of the executing portion of things, as I said, there is no way for this event to happen without federal involvement at the execution level. So if all that needs to happen is some type of involvement one way or another, they can either say the fact that the event is even happening in the first place is our involvement, or security is our involvement. This lawsuit was dead on arrival. That is certainly how I started out this stream, by saying that this lawsuit was very much a stunt in order to say a lot of, basically get out a lot of the feelings that this organization has, this public integrity project. It was basically a stunt for them to be able to air their grievances. And for that reason, I suppose it's succeeding because we're talking about it. But will it do much more than that? Probably not. All right. The UFC Freedom 250 event also is not being held for the celebration of the 250th anniversary of American independence. Rather, UFC Freedom 250 is being held for the financial benefit of the UFC, Paramount, and their advertisers, and to celebrate the 80th birthday of Donald Trump's birth, or the 80th anniversary of Donald Trump's birth. Accordingly, defendants' determination that UFC Freedom 250 qualifies for the America 250 exemption was arbitrary, capricious, and an abuse of discretion, and in excess of authority, because it disregarded the event's plainly commercial and private character and the regulations' plain text. That, I guess, is where the court is going to be able to decide whether it falls under the exemption or not. Absent the exemption, the categorical prohibitions of such and such and the limitations of such and such both apply, meaning that no permit may lawfully issue to holding. Absent of the exemption, the categorical prohibitions of this and the limitations of this both apply, meaning that no permit may lawfully issue to holding a sporting event on either the South Lawn or at the Lincoln Memorial. Might be a word missing in there. Or maybe I just am ignorant of the wording. But either way, they're saying that the exemption is not there for this event, so these statutes cannot be applied properly. Defendants' action, nonetheless, authorizing the event was therefore arbitrary, capricious, and an abuse of discretion, not in accordance with the law, and in excess of statutory jurisdiction, authority, or limitations without the meaning of such and such and such and such. Defendants' unlawful action has injured and will injure plaintiffs as set forth above. Plaintiffs are entitled to an order holding unlawful and setting aside defendants' illegal permitting decision. So they're saying that because these people are injured because of this, these alleged transgressions, that this event should not be allowed to take place. All right, count 2. Erecting of structures on federal parkland without congressional authorization. Plaintiffs incorporate all allegations set forth above and below as though set forth in this paragraph. The National Park Service and Department of the Interior are agencies within the meaning of this such and such. Defendants' decisions authorizing the construction of UFC Freedom 250 event facilities, including in particular the claw, are final agency actions subject to judicial review under such and such, such and such, and such and such. Under this such and such, Provision of the Park Service's Organic Act, no structure may be erected on the public grounds of the District of Columbia under the charge of the National Park Service, except as expressly authorized by Congress. The claw is a structure. The claw has been erected on the South Lawn of the White House. Congress has not authorized the erection of the claw on the South Lawn of the White House. Congress has not authorized permanent installation of the claw on the South Lawn, as Trump has indicated may be his intention. By authorizing the erection of the claw without congressional authorization, defendants acted contrary to such and such, and therefore not in accordance with the law and in excess of statutory jurisdiction, authority, and or limitations within the meaning of these things here. The defendant's unlawful action has injured and will injure the plaintiffs as set forth above. Plaintiffs are entitled to an order holding unlawful and setting aside NPS's authorization and enjoining the erection of the structures and the staging of the event. So, yep, I mean, more saying that, the structure is unlawful because of the nature of the provisions not being satisfied as far as America 250 goes, or Freedom 250, neither of which apparently UFC Freedom 250 are a part of. All right, count 3, failure to conduct environmental review. The one that I've said is probably the best, or the strongest case. Plaintiffs incorporate all allegations, blah, blah, blah. Plaintiffs plead that the court in the alternative to count 1 above. The National Park Service and Department of the Interior are agencies, blah, blah, blah. Yes, we already read all of this. In fact, I think that we're pretty much good with most of this stuff here. Defendants permitting the decision to authorize the construction of UFC Freedom 250 event facilities, including in particular the claw, is a final agency action subject to judicial review under such and such. The National Environmental Policy Act requires a federal agency to prepare an environmental impact statement, or at least an environmental assessment, before undertaking a major federal action significantly affecting the quality of the human environment, unless a valid categorization exclusion applies. So, they would say the counterpoint to this is that a valid categorical exclusion does apply. I don't think that necessarily tracks based on this, though. So, again, go back in the stream if you want to read all of that. Plaintiff's lead claim, super count 1, is that UFC Freedom 250 does not constitute a federal action because it is a private, profit-motivated endeavor. But alternatively, insofar as UFC Freedom 250 is deemed a public-private partnership that may be authorized under America 250 exemption, the event likewise constitutes a major federal action subject to NEPA. That right there. This is your biggest potential claim right there. Line 193. If it is not a private event, then it would be a public-private partnership. And if it is a public-private partnership and it is authorized under the America 250 exemption, it is still subject to the NEPA. And that right there, I think, is as ironclad as you get. So that is, I think, the biggest part of this whole thing. The America 250 rule did not waive the NEPA. To the contrary, it committed each permit issued under such and such to the appropriate NEPA process at that time. Exactly. And that, of course, is what we have highlighted here. By authorizing the event in the absence of the environmental review, NEPA requires defendants acted without observance of procedure required by law and not in accordance with the law within the meaning of these things. Defendants' unlawful action has injured and will injure the plaintiffs as set forth above. Exactly. Plaintiffs are entitled to an order holding unlawful and setting aside defendant's authorization pending compliance with NEPA. And 25K down the fucking drain. Oh, did you lose? You lost your bet, E-Money J? Sorry, brother. That is a lot of money to lose, though. Go hard or go home. I guess you're going home. The CEO of the Public Integrity Project, Russ Feingold, worked for the Obama administration. This is just a dog whistle to his TDS homies. I mean, that's kind of what I was saying, Lachlan. Again, go back to the beginning of the stream for all of the context as far as the Public Integrity Project portion of things goes. But as I said, I hope that they keep that same energy when it's the other side of the political aisle, because that's always what is the Achilles heel of all of these types of things. You have something called the Public Integrity Project, which says stop corruption before it's too late. I hate to break it to you, both sides of the aisle are corrupt in the United States. So apply it across the board evenly. That's what I said too. You see Trump here, Marco Rubio, a bunch of Republicans or whatever. You go over to here, you see Elon Musk. Like, you're making it very clear what side of the aisle you are on. I would think that for something as bold as to say stop corruption before it's too late, that you would want to be as nonpartisan as possible. But unfortunately, they do not seem to be adhering to that. But again, I do think that there are some valid claims in here, most especially this one here, count 3. All right, count 4 is the ultra vires agency action, non-statutory. Plaintiffs incorporate all allegations set forth above and below, as though set forth in this paragraph. Plaintiffs have a non-statutory cause of action to set aside and enjoin agency action that is ultra vires and in excess of delegated powers. I don't know what ultra vires means. That's a legal term I'm sure that I'm not familiar with. Beyond the powers. In law, it describes any action taken by a corporation, governmental body, or official that exceeds the legal scope of their authority. Okay, gotcha. That's interesting. So yeah, ultra vires, I guess, is the Latin way of saying governmental overreach. I like that. I should probably commit that one to memory. All right, no constitutional provision, statute, regulation, or other source of law allows defendants to authorize private sporting events on the White House South Lawn or at the Lincoln Memorial. Such authorization, therefore, was therefore ultra vires, and insofar as it is not subject to challenge under the Administrative Procedure Act, can and should be nevertheless enjoined. All right. Plaintiffs incorporate all allegations set forth in both. Oh, so this is the declaratory judgment is what they're looking for. I think, right? Oh, no. Okay. No. This is just the count 4 is declaratory judgment. Federal Declaratory Judgment Act is what they're referencing. Under the Declaratory Judgment Act, this court may declare the rights and other legal relations of any interested party seeking such declaration, whether or not further relief is or could be sought. An actual and justiciable controversy exists between the plaintiffs and defendants concerning the lawfulness of defendants' authorization of UFC Freedom 250 and the construction of its facilities on the South Lawn. Plaintiffs are entitled to a judgment declaring the defendant's conduct is unlawful in excess of statutory authority and undertaken without the environmental review that the law requires. All right, and this is a prayer for relief. That might also be a legal term that I'm not familiar with, but this is the prayer for relief. Plaintiff respectfully requests that the court, A, declare unlawful and ultra vires defendant's decision to authorizing the organizers of UFC Freedom 250 to utilize the South Lawn and Lincoln Memorial for a sporting event and to erect structures on the South Lawn. B, vacate and set aside defendant's decision as arbitrary, capricious, and an abuse of discretion under such and such, not in accordance with law under such and such, in excess of statutory jurisdiction, authority, or limitations, or short of statutory right such and such without observance of procedure required by law under such and such, and is thus ultra vires. C. Stay the effect of defendant's decision during the pendency of this lawsuit under such and such. So saying to stay these decisions, make these decisions not valid, essentially revoke the event. Temporarily restrain, preliminarily enjoin, and permanently enjoin defendants from permitting the organizers of UFC Freedom 250 to utilize the South Lawn and Lincoln Memorial for a sporting event, and from permitting the organizers of UFC Freedom 250 to erect structures, including the so-called claw on the South Lawn. E. Award plaintiffs their cost and reasonable attorney's fees. And F. Grant such other and further relief as the court deems just and proper. Respectfully submitted by Samuel T. Ward Packard, Public Integrity Project, and all of these other parties here. So there you have it. I guess I can email them if I want to. I didn't realize those were clickable links. But yeah, that is what we're working with here. And I didn't have it pulled up, but I did see that for their part, the Trump administration has responded to these claims. Sorry. So this is from ABC. Says Trump administration lambasts lawsuit seeking to stop White House event. The Justice Department on Tuesday urged the federal government to reject a lawsuit seeking to stop the White House's Ultimate Fighting Championship event scheduled for this weekend, attacking its plaintiffs as two people who believe they have superior taste and want to spoil the event for everyone else, completely disregarding the fact that the NEPA provision was not followed. But that was to be expected, I suppose. In a filing Tuesday evening, the department argued the lawsuit brought by two Virginia residents lacked any reasonable standing while describing the timing of the filing as inexcusable, given the event was first announced nearly a year ago. That's what I referenced earlier in the stream too, and I certainly agree with this. If you had wanted to make this an actual case that had some type of merit beyond being a stunt, you should not have done this less than a week before it. Or just over a week before it, rather. This event is on this coming Sunday. This lawsuit was brought last Saturday. So this is a little bit ridiculous timing, but obviously they knew that there was very little to no actual standing for this thing, so they did it as more of a stunt, I suppose. It would be easy enough to simply avert their gazes for the weekend. You don't like looking at it? Don't look at it. Kind of, there probably is some claim to that. But again, what about the environmental impact? Instead, they seek to enlist the power of the federal court to impose their idiosyncratic preferences on the rest of the country and ruin an event designed to celebrate the United States of America, the department said. No one is holding the plaintiffs in a jiu-jitsu lock, forcing them to watch UFC Freedom 250 against their will. The public interest does not favor allowing them to exercise a heckler's veto, particularly at this late date. But again, I would say all of that actually does track for the most part, but what about the environment? That is where you are lacking. This just goes into the rest of stuff about the event. Calling the event deeply corrupt, the lawsuit alleges the Trump administration improperly. Yeah, this is all the stuff that we already read, so no need to really go into the rest of this. So that's what the Department of Defense has to say about it. And now you know. Now you know. We have now read the entirety of the legal complaint here. We went through all 32 pages of it. I gave my best interpretation of it, being a non-lawyer and a complete moron. So take what I say and my thoughts about it with a grain of salt, being someone who maybe knows a couple more words than the average person, but does not have a smarter mind inside of my head than anyone else. Hopefully the Public Integrity Project got what they were hoping for out of this, because they're certainly not going to get the event stopped. So maybe just us talking about it was the intended result. If so, congratulations, you got that. As I said at the start of the stream, keep the same energy when it comes to stopping corruption when your own party is in power. You know, if Lachlan is saying that Russ Feingold used to work in the Obama administration, if you're being partisan against the right, then you need to keep that same energy against the left if your aim truly is to stop corruption. If not, you are a partisan hack and you are part of the problem, I would say. As I have always said, left, right, they're both wrong. So, you know, it should be more of a nonpartisan endeavor to find the truth, to stop corruption, and to restore this republic to its former glory, if there ever was that former glory to begin with, and not just perceived glory. I love this country. I want what's best for this country. I think most people in power want power for themselves, and probably do believe they're doing the right thing in regards to trying to gain that power, or to gain to gain the betterment of this country, but really end up enriching themselves, their friends, and not really doing much for the average people at the end of the day. So that being said, people, we've been on for about 3 hours. I've gone through the entirety of this thing. Draw your own conclusions. Let me know what you think about this lawsuit in the comment section. Do you agree with the tenets here? Do you think there's any case? Do you think there's no case? Do you think that it's going to have any impact on this event? Are you looking forward to seeing Miss Douglas and her papier-mâché props outside protesting at UFC Freedom 250? I want to hear what you have to say about it. Also, if they really cared, they'd be looking into plenty more corrupt shit, but they enrich themselves off that exact corruption. Yeah, I mean, right. That's kind of my point. There's corruption across the board. Certainly there's tons of it inside of this administration. There's plenty to hold this administration to the fire about as far as corruption goes. I don't think I've ever seen a more brazen lack of regard for the rule of law than this administration. But that being said, keep that same energy. That's all I'm saying. So, any which way, that is going to be about it for this one. Like I said, let me know what you think about all of this stuff in the comments. Yamashow.com for all of your merchandise needs. There you go. If the president can have UFC Freedom 250/Trump coins to commemorate that event, you can get yourself some Yama merch to commemorate any one of the streams that I have done throughout the 800 pieces of content that we've done on this channel. So get yourself something nice over at Yamashow.com. Friday, we're going to be doing the review of the Furious film. We're doing an MMA on film first day review. So if you are planning on seeing the film The Furious, me and Chase will be giving you all of the information that you need to know about that film. We will be doing a spoiler-free portion of it to begin with. So if you want spoiler-free, you'll get that in the beginning of the stream. We'll give you a warning for when spoilers are coming up. Check it out if you are planning on seeing the film. If you're not planning on seeing the film, watch it anyway. We will be live, of course, this Sunday for UFC Freedom 250, unless they get an injunction. So I will see you then for that. We will also be live for The Ultimate Fighter, which is happening on the same night. So you're getting 2 streams for the price of 1 on Sunday. Probably something on Saturday as well. Don't know exactly what yet, but I know there's a lot of cards going on. So either way, that's going to be the end of this one for tonight, guys. Thank you so much for going over this with me. I guess, again, just to sum up my own thoughts, I think that there are some good points, but very little actual leg to stand on. It'll be interesting to see if anything does come of it. Till next time, this has been Thinker St. James. Thanks for hanging out. Like and subscribe if you're new. Have a great rest of your night, a great rest of your week, and as always, fight on.